Chapter 838. Get to work. Lin Yuan's forehead was full of black lines, and he angrily roared in a low voice. The 3 million incense power was converted from his merit of spreading the Chinese language in this world. However, Lin Yuan only spread it, he did not create it. The majority of the merit given by the will of the world belonged to Cangjie, and Lin Yuan only ate a small part. If he could spread the language, every time someone studied it, Lin Yuan would be able to get a small amount of merit power. However, the 3 million incense power was not even warm, and he was forced to spend it, which inevitably made Lin Yuan extremely unhappy. Powerful hosts could help each other, but hosts who could activate this function had to have accumulated at least 1 million Joss flames in their hands, which meant that they had already reached the later stage of development. This function allowed hosts to communicate with each other, and it could be considered as a practice for the final battle that could come at any time. Lin Yuan should be the only host who had activated this function before reaching the later stage of development. After all, the merit of creating and spreading the language was too great. If he could convert it into his own strength, he would naturally gain more than lose. But now, after working so hard, he actually ended up as a worker? Moreover, the 3 million incense power in exchange for a host who was willing to help and was really free to descend for 3 minutes. In addition, this world was originally not complete, and could only barely accommodate a true god. If he wanted to go further, he had to wait for the world to be complete, or leave the sky martial world to cross the sea of bitterness, and go to a world that could bear more power. 3 million incense power in exchange for 3 minutes of someone else's clone, this trade was a loss to his grandmother's home. However, this guy was not in a hurry to make a move after coming down, and instead wanted to chat with Lin Yuan. It was obvious that he wanted to work but did not put in effort. Kill who? The white coat was slightly startled and slowly spread out his hands and said with a bitter smile, "You asked me to be a fighter, but you should at least give me a target so I know who to hit, right?" Lin Yuan pulled Tai Ma to his side and said expressionlessly, "It's up to you, except for me and this crab, you can kill anyone." The man in the white coat licked his lips and disappeared in a flash. When he reappeared, he was holding a head that was still dripping blood. The group of ancestral demon experts looked at each other. Soon after, they simultaneously looked towards the demonic beast that resembled Wuxia. However, they discovered that although its enormous body was still standing on the spot, the head on its neck had already disappeared. Not only had the green fur on its neck been dyed red with blood, even its severed neck was badly mutilated. This kind of injury was obviously not caused by a sharp weapon. In other words, in the blink of an eye, an ancestral demon with a powerful bloodline was beheaded with bare hands? What the hell? What? Just who was the demonic beast here? The ancestral demon ancestors who had gathered their courage and stayed behind were all shocked and furious. However, none of them dared to stand out and face the white-robed man head-on, fearing that they would be the next unlucky one to have their head chopped off. The speed of the ancestral demon ancestors was very fast, at least 3 times faster than when they came here. Lin Yuan even suspected that if they had burst out with such speed from the beginning, he might not have been able to spend 3 million incense power to summon his colleagues. Unfortunately, no matter how swift their speed was, it was completely meaningless before this man in white coat who was swift like a ghost and extremely ruthless in his attacks. Every single breath of time, 1 to 3 ancestral demon realm experts would be beheaded, torn apart, and crushed. These ancestral demon ancestors who ran rampant in the endless sea and could even wrestle with the dragon palace of the 4 seas when they joined forces were rapidly losing members under the white-robed man's pursuit. In fact, because their speed was too fast, they quickly caught up with some demonic beasts who wanted to sneak back to the Willowstone region. These demonic beasts who had sensed that something was wrong at the beginning and wanted to sneak away were unable to escape in the end. They also joined the group that was being pursued. An ancestral dragon who was guarding the Willowstone fortress felt that his breathing had stopped. One person was chasing a group of ancestral demon ancestors and massacring them? Was this reasonable? This was not reasonable. However, this scene was indeed happening in front of him. Although there were many ancestral demon ancestors who had gathered in the Willowstone fortress, this was the accumulation of demonic beasts who had reproduced in the endless sea for countless years. If not for this, even if the endless sea had a geographical advantage, it would not necessarily have an easier time than the Hengduan mountain range. Although the various forces did not get along well with one another, and their hatred was even greater than the other, they had a tacit understanding to only let the younger generation fight. They never dared to involve existences above the Demon King realm. Only when the guardians of the heavenly gates came knocking, or when the old dominators appeared, which was enough to shake the foundations of the entire endless sea, would these ancestral demons and ancient gods appear one after another to deal with the troubles that the younger generation could not resolve. Every time the person that Lin Yuan summoned attacked, not only did he kill ancestral demon experts, but he also killed the foundation of the entire Endless Sea. Although the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas' position as the overlord of the Endless Sea was stabilized, it was disadvantageous for the overall situation. A few people from the Dragon Temple wanted to stop him, but after silently looking at each other, no one said anything. Apart from the 4 ancestral dragons, the other 2 dragon gods of the Dragon God Temple were just putting it nicely, but in essence they were only at the ancestral demon realm. Moreover, even the 4 ancestral dragons had never really stepped through that door. Just like the transcendence among the guardians of the Heavenly Gate, they were only separated from the ancestral demon realm and the sovereign realm by a large realm. They were stronger and had a longer lifespan, but they were not real gods. If their faith was broken, they would not be far from death. In essence, they were more similar to the Protector Een god that the human empires worshipped with the fate of the nation. This was not their problem, but this world was not complete to begin with. Reaching the threshold of the true God was already the limit. If they wanted to improve further, they could only leave this world or find a way to make this world complete. However, although they were strong, the difference in their realms was not big. The man in the white coat could kill those ancestral demons like chopping melons and vegetables. If it were them, they might not be able to withstand the second move. Even until now, they did not understand how the man in the white coat attacked. Those ancestral demons did not seem to have the slightest intention to resist. They just kept running and were one-sidedly killed. Without fighting, they naturally could not see the depth of the man in the white coat. Someone is spying on us? Just as the killing was going on, the man in the white coat suddenly raised his head and looked at the sea above. Immediately, he stretched out his right hand and gently pointed. Chapter 839. Following the white coat's light tap, a transcendent realm master who was spying from a certain corner of the continent suddenly had a change in expression. He shattered the light screen in front of him with a palm strike, and at the same time retreated more than 100 feet. His face was still filled with fear. How did the other party discover me? Tick-tock, tick-tock, What's this sound? The transcendent realm master slowly lowered his head, only to find a pool of blood suddenly appearing under his feet. This is... Before the last thought arose, the transcendent realm master had completely lost consciousness. Immediately after, his clothes were split into 2, revealing his sturdy body underneath. Then, a thin red line slowly appeared on his body. After another moment, his entire body was split into 2, and directly fell to the ground. One finger killing a transcendent realm master. This step didn't only happen to this person. Other transcendent realm masters, venerable realm masters, and even Dao initiation realm masters were also affected as well. No matter what their intentions were, as long as they stared at Lin Yuan's existence at this moment, they would either die on the spot or pay an extremely painful price. For example, when a white-haired old man in white coat pointed his finger, he also retreated rapidly. At the same time, he reached out and grabbed a Dao initiation realm cultivator standing beside him. After a moment, the Dao initiation realm cultivator directly exploded into minced meat, and even his soul was directly annihilated. Similarly, the white-haired old man's right hand was also blown into minced meat. What's more terrifying was that no matter how much power he channeled, even if he didn't hesitate to use his precious divine power, he couldn't regenerate this right hand. Moreover, in his perception, his soul was also missing a part of his right hand. This also meant that from now on, even if he entered the reincarnation cycle, he would be born with a disability. He would either be born without a right hand, or his right hand would only be a decoration. What a vicious method. The white-haired old man sucked in a breath of cold air. He reached out and stopped a group of venerable realm masters and transcendents who rushed over after hearing the commotion. His eyes were crimson red. Now, everyone knew that Lin Yuan didn't have the backing of the demon court. However, there was also an extremely powerful existence behind Lin Yuan. Even when the demon court was at its peak, it didn't necessarily have such a terrifying method, right? Killing an demon ancestor was like chopping melons and vegetables. From countless miles away, a casual finger could take the life of a transcendent realm master. What kind of monster was this? What was even more frightening was that they had also heard the conversation between Lin Yuan and the man in the white coat. Although he didn't understand what the so-called colleague meant, judging from Lin Yuan's demeanor and tone, he wasn't the descendant or disciple of the doctor in the white coat. The two of them probably belonged to some special organization. Although there was a huge difference in power, their positions were equal. The other thing was that the man in the white coat had said that this world was unable to withstand his true body, so this existence that could kill as he pleased was only a doppelganger or a puppet. Demon Court? The Demon Court was nothing. Even when the Demon Court was at its peak, it could not be crushed to death with one hand. The white-haired old man pondered for a moment and sighed, "Get people to prepare. See how many resources the northern frontier sent to us. Increase it by 10 times and send it back to the northern frontier. In addition, inform the disciples that if they don't have anything to do, they should immediately head to the northern frontier and help the northern frontier resist the Sky Demon's attack. Cancel all the probing." Whether it was handing the Sky Demon to Lin Yuan to deal with or conniving with the Dao Initiation Realm cultivators to deal with Lin Yuan, it was hard to say that these superiors didn't participate in this matter. Perhaps they didn't take action or express their opinions, but the actions of their subordinates couldn't be hidden from them. In a sense, they didn't stop it. All the probing was because Lin Yuan had amazing secrets and opportunities. Originally, the path of cultivation was to fight against the heavens. There was no such thing as being free and unfettered. People who were neither greedy nor ruthless could not survive in the cultivation world. Everyone wanted to swallow Lin Yuan and make Lin Yuan's opportunities their own. Thus, they constantly probed Lin Yuan to see what kind of opponents Lin Yuan could deal with. In the end, good fellow they were good fellow. Rabbits will bite when forced into a corner. If this Black Jiao was forced into a corner, he might even slaughter the entire cultivation world. Furthermore, there was no doubt that someone like Lin Yuan was destined to be a fish in a pond. Sooner or later, he would walk out of the heavenly gates and head to a bigger world to cultivate. It was only a matter of time before he came into contact with the guardians of the heavenly gates. When the time came, just by looking at how Lin Yuan planned to kick Dao integration stage cultivators out of the game after breaking through, it was clear what kind of bitter consequences they would have to suffer if they became enemies with Lin Yuan. Perhaps it was too late for them to make up for it now, but paying a price to let this matter pass was much better than Lin Yuan directly destroying their inheritance, right? After all, human cultivators were different from the beasts. Although humans had books and words as teaching materials, everyone knew that the most important part of the sentence was actually the first half of the sentence. If there was no master to guide you, even if you studied the cultivation method for your entire life, you might not be able to make any progress. On the other hand, the beasts were particular about bloodline inheritance. They firmly believed that their deceased ancestors still remained in their soul and bloodline. As long as they cultivated step by step, they would be able to unlock the various magical powers and techniques left behind by their ancestors in their bloodline. Thus, as long as the beast's bloodline was not severed, their inheritance would not be destroyed. They only needed time to nurture powerful beasts. If the human cultivation world was heavily damaged by Lin Yuan, the Sky Martial world would fall into the Dark Age again. At that time, the humans who had bullied the beasts for countless years might even go extinct. No matter how one's heart was, after cultivating to the transcendent realm, one would more or less understand karma. If such a day really came, Lin Yuan would definitely suffer the consequences he deserved. However, those who caused all of this to happen because of their own selfish desires would not have a good ending. Thus, the moment the white-robed man showed his might, countless similar orders were issued from the Heavenly Gate Guardians' forces. Even the Dao Initiation Realm cultivators with big shots behind them began to lower their heads and admit their mistakes. Even the big shots had to pay 10 times the compensation. How many times would they have to pay? This was undoubtedly a shocking number. Other than that, there were many Dao Initiation Realm cultivators who did not know what happened in the Endless Sea. They only noticed that many forces had cut off contact with them. Either it was a unilateral declaration or they were giving up on cooperation bit by bit. Among them, there were some who clearly had the attitude of cutting off contact with them even at a loss, which made them even more confused. However, when they went to look for them, the other party did not say anything. They only looked at them as if they were looking at dead people and then ordered them to leave. There would always be some people who would be pushed out to vent Lin Yuan's anger, right? Chapter 840. Let's not talk about how the Gate of Heaven's side was in chaos for the time being, but 3 minutes, which was not a long time, had already quietly passed. The young man in the white coat pointed at the ancestor demon who was fleeing in the direction of the Willowstone Fortress. Then, with a light smile, he stretched out his hand again and cut open a crack in the space barrier. Then he stepped into it and disappeared. Lin Yuan, who was watching all of this coldly from the sidelines, was still sitting in the same place. His voice did not stop chanting. However, this time, the ancestor demons of the Endless Sea who were scared out of their wits did not dare to jump out and say anything. They were not fools and could understand the situation. First of all, they could be sure that the helper that Lin Yuan had just summoned was not from the sky martial world. If he wanted to descend here, he must have paid a sufficient price. Especially this kind of method of not going through the gate of heaven and directly stepping through the void to appear, the price to pay was even greater. Moreover, the other party's descent was not unlimited. In about 3 minutes the other party would have to leave this world. But still no one dared to provoke Lin Yuan. No one knew what price Lin Yuan had paid, and whether he had enough to summon that person again. No one dared to probe. The last guy who tried to probe had already lost his life. Even the other ancestor demons who were just watching from the sidelines and wanted to see if they could drink a mouthful of meat soup had suffered a calamity. Moreover, the white coat man's finger seemed to be as light as the wind and clouds, but it contained an extremely terrifying power. It was likely that those who had spied on this place had either died or paid an extremely painful price. Seeing that the Endless Sea side had all fallen silent, Lin Yuan disdainfully sneered twice in his heart. This situation was naturally within his expectations. It was just like the nuclear weapons in his previous life. No matter how great the price you had to pay after using it, you only needed to let others know that you had a nuclear weapon in your hands. When others spoke to you, they would not dare to be too presumptuous. 3 million incense power was not much. At least in the eyes of the top hosts, this was only the reward for 3 minutes. But for an existence like Lin Yuan, if it was not for the merit of spreading words, he really would not be able to take out that much. Relying on his own accumulation, who knew when he would be able to accumulate 3 million incense power? Perhaps there were indeed some people who would not give up and continue to probe Lin Yuan. But after today's matter, most people or demonic beasts, as long as they did not have a death grudge with Lin Yuan, they would not easily become enemies with Lin Yuan. At the same time, the situation on the battlefield gradually changed. The Great Old Ones did not expect that almost all the ancestral monsters in the Willowstone Sea would come out in full force and still not be able to stop Lin Yuan from continuing the battle of ideas. This time they were truly flustered. They commanded the aberrations at the front line to madly attack Lin Yuan's area, wanting to find and eliminate this troublesome opponent, Lin Yuan. However, the Endless Sea's demonic beasts on the battlefield naturally would not let them do as they wished. One by one, they roared and desperately blocked the aberrations who wanted to attack Lin Yuan. Whether it was these demonic beasts or aberrations, they were thrown into the battlefield at this time. In fact, in the eyes of the higher-ups of both sides, they were nothing more than cannon fodder. Simply put, no matter how they fought among themselves, it would not really affect the overall situation. Even if they wiped out all the aberrations, they could not kill the Great Old Ones. If they lurked a little, they would be a ticking time bomb. No one knew when they would be able to brew a disaster comparable to or even more terrifying than today. In the war of the cultivation world, what really determined the direction of the war was the battle between the strong. However, these Endless Sea's demonic beasts also knew that it was Lin Yuan's strange chanting that completely suppressed the power of the aberrations that had infected their minds. This way they did not have to worry about being aberrated into monsters at any time, nor did they need to divert some of their attention to suppress their sea of consciousness. They could fight with all their strength. This was how the situation of the battle was turned around, and they would no longer be suppressed by the aberrations. Therefore, protecting Lin Yuan had become their subconscious behavior. It's time to move, right? Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched slightly, and he looked in the direction of the aberrations. It was absolutely impossible for these aberrations, who were temporarily transformed, to be opponents of these Endless Sea's demonic beasts. Even if their bodies were stronger than the demonic beasts after their transformation, and their means were stranger than the demonic beasts, the most fatal thing was that they did not have any discipline. What little intelligence they had left could not allow them to organize the corresponding formation to fight. Even when they encountered other aberrations blocking their way, they would directly attack. These were all fatal problems. If there was the power to distort the minds of other creatures, it would not matter. After all, under this degree of suppression, the opponent could not even use 70% of their strength. Naturally, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, in the current situation, no matter how powerful the aberration's individual strength was, they were not enough to compete with a battle formation. Wanting to kill or stop Lin Yuan was almost an impossible task for these aberrations. After all, the Great Old Ones had not appeared for a long time, and could not compare to the Endless Sea's many years of foundation. Even if they had distorted many demonic beasts for their own use, the number was extremely limited. In addition, now that they were blocked by the Endless Sea's demonic beasts, there was no way for them to replenish their manpower. At this time, one death was one less Great Old Ones. With the help of an alien like Lin Yuan, if the situation went smoothly, when the aberrations were eliminated one by one, the Great Old Ones would not be able to cause any trouble. They would be completely annihilated by the Endless Sea's demonic beasts. Leaving Lin Yuan alone? That was obviously impossible. Therefore, the ones who were going to make a move next should be the real Great Old Ones, the wise men and heroes of the old era. They were almighty beings who had died in the past. However, this world was not complete. The heaven realm and the underworld did not exist. Even the so-called ascension and cultivation was just stepping out of the heaven gate, crossing the sea of bitterness with the body, and going to a truly complete world. This also meant that the 6 paths of reincarnation in this world were not complete. Although the wandering souls and wild ghosts in this world could not affect the normal operation of the material world, this did not mean that they could not do anything. For example, fallen ancient existences like Yang Qinglin and the Fire Kirin could use all kinds of crooked ways to ensure that their intelligence would not be destroyed. They could even be reborn after absorbing enough energy. Even if they did not want to be reborn, it did not matter. They could still exist in the state of wandering souls and wild ghosts. Even the will of the world could not directly force the truly powerful existences to reincarnate. After all, this world was not complete. It was only the will of the world, and it did not have the power of the heavenly Tao. Chapter 841. Even the souls of ordinary people could resist reincarnation due to various reasons. As long as they could hide from the ghost messenger, they could live forever in this world, let alone those mighty figures with heavenly cultivation. The meaning of the existence of the underworld was to form a sufficiently powerful force, either suppressing or absorbing, sending the souls of these mighty figures into the cycle of reincarnation. Otherwise, ancient mighty figures like the Fire Kirin and Yang Qinglin would be like leaks, popping up from time to time. Whether it was the cultivators of this world or the will of the world, they would probably have a headache. It was just that the world was not complete now. The so-called underworld was just a river condensed by Lin Yuan. Therefore, these old rulers would wake up from the long river of time and struggle to come to the world of the living. They would mutate into all kinds of monsters, trying in vain to strangle the new era in the cradle so that their true spirits would not be destroyed and they would continue to exist in the world and receive incense offerings. Perhaps in the future, they would have the possibility of becoming gods. Whether it was for public or private reasons, the existence of these old rulers could be said to be Lin Yuan's mortal enemies, and they were the kind that could not be defeated. The reverse was also true. It's just that, Lin Yuan glanced in the direction of the Willowstone Fortress, and his eyes became somewhat gloomy. He had indeed miscalculated a step before. He did not expect that the monsters of the Endless Sea would have ulterior motives. They wanted to use the power of the old rulers to eliminate the experts of the other sea monster races and ensure that they could become the new overlord of the Endless Sea. In the end, the two sides did not get along, and the matter directly went out of control. Now that those old rulers had appeared to kill him, these big shots of the Endless Sea would probably turn a blind eye to it, right? After all, other than Lin Yuan himself, no one knew if he could summon the white-robed man or his colleague, who had the same combat strength as the white-robed man to help him. On the bright side, if the old rulers were also afraid of the existence of Lin Yuan's nuclear weapon, they might directly retreat and not dare to continue fighting with Lin Yuan. They would wait for them to discuss countermeasures before coming out to find an opportunity to fight. However, on the other hand, the old rulers might as well advance with their entire army instead of retreating, forcing the monsters of the Endless Sea to come out and fight. Who knew how long these great old ones were going to hide? Lin Yuan had long since figured out the system's quest mechanism. The so-called rewards and punishments were based on the content and difficulty of the quest. They had to conform to the standards of the rules. So, once the quest failed, even if the system was unwilling, it had to give the corresponding punishment. Without the system, could Lin Yuan still be so arrogant? The answer was no. He had been deliberately suppressing his strength, so that every step he took was incomparably firm. He was guarding against the possibility that the system would pull the carpet from under him and directly turn him into a puppet or scrap after defeating the big boss Hongjun. However, while the path was correct, some of its functions were still borrowing the power of the system. For example, without the system's sacrificial exchange, his path to the totem would be broken. There would be no shortcuts to the growth and creation of his spawns, and he could only let them evolve on their own. Do you want to get rid of the shadow of the system? Sure. First, you have to become a god. It was fine if he couldn't become a god, because the system couldn't do anything to him. It could even be said that the system needed him. However, if he couldn't become a god, it was equivalent to binding his future to this world. He was destined to not be able to take revenge, and Lin Yuan would really go crazy. What should I do? Thoughts spun rapidly in Lin Yuan's mind. One idea after another floated up and one after another disappeared. After about 5 or 6 breaths, Lin Yuan slowly raised his head and looked at the battlefield with a gloomy gaze. Immediately, the principles that he kept chanting suddenly stopped. The palpitating and uneasy distorted spirit changed the situation of being suppressed and regained the upper hand. Caught off guard, many sea demon warriors were distorted into aberrations. The number was actually more than the number of aberrations killed in the previous battle. The remaining sea demon warriors returned to the situation where their strength was suppressed and began to hold their heads and take a beating. The situation of the battle changed again. This Black Jiao, why did he stop again? A sea demon ancestor's face was as gloomy as water, but he didn't dare to get angry. After all, the scene of being chased had left a deep impression on him. He now knew very well that the Black Jiao wasn't an existence that they could casually berate or toy with. Once he bared his fangs, he was a big boss that could surpass them. Even if the Black Jiao's cultivation wasn't high, it wouldn't change this fact. However, he still couldn't help but get angry. After all, they had risked being distorted and rushed out of the fortress to force the Black Jiao to shut up. In the end, the Black Jiao ignored them and instead called out a colleague to kill them. After today, many sea demon ancestors would no longer exist. The territories and benefits that they had taken in the past would all have to be spat out, and they would become inferior sea demon clans. But now, good heavens, he was forced to stop, but he actually stopped by himself while chanting. At first, the sea demon ancestor, who had realized that Lin Yuan might have a great killing weapon in his hands that even the dragon clan of the Four Seas couldn't help but have a dark expression. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and said, "This guy is teaching us how to do things." Previously, he used some unknown language to suppress the distorted power of the aberrations. He showed us that victory was in our hands and forced us to rush out to stop him. Only then did he show his muscles to intimidate us. His goal is to tell us that he isn't a junior, but an existence that can stand on equal footing with us and even make us fear him. At this point, the sea demon ancestor thought carefully before continuing. As for why he stopped now, it's just to tell us to put away those so-called schemes and obediently exterminate these aberrations. It's because only he can suppress the distorted power of the aberrations. If he doesn't stand on our side, no one will have a good time. Don't even think about becoming the overlord of the endless sea. This Black Jiao is actually this vicious? Those warriors fighting at the front lines are all protecting him. How could he? Another sea demon ancestor spoke. His expression didn't look too good either. After all, among the various sea demon clans, his sea demon ancestor's bloodline was the lowest. At the same time, they also reproduced the most. Close to 30% of the warriors fighting at the front lines were his descendants. Although he didn't feel bad for his descendants when they suddenly fell into a disadvantageous position, he naturally couldn't be happy. This is another part of his intelligence. The sea demon ancestor, who seemed to have seen through Lin Yuan's intentions, sighed softly. Chapter 842. What do you mean? The face of the demon ancestor, who had lost the most descendants, changed. He seemed to have thought of something, but he couldn't be sure. The ancestral demon, who seemed to have seen through Lin Yuan's intentions, shook his head and said, "It is telling us that if we want to play dirty tricks, it is more willing to lose face than us. Whoever is scheming sneakily behind its back, it dares to directly throw away its responsibility and let the endless sea suffer a calamity. Don't forget, this Black Jiao is different from us. His base isn't in the endless sea." Although the demon ancestor had misinterpreted part of Lin Yuan's meaning, the general idea was correct. This was what Lin Yuan wanted to express. He was now volunteering to help. After all, no one knew that he had a mission. Volunteering to help meant that he could quit at any time. Not only did the Endless Seas monsters not dare to stop him, they even had to hand over their outstanding descendants to Lin Yuan and let Lin Yuan take them to the Jianghu continent to seek refuge. Perhaps they could preserve a trace of their bloodline and not be completely destroyed by the aberrations. He was helping out because of friendship, but not helping out was also his duty. No one could stand out and criticize him. Want Lin Yuan to take the thunder himself? Sorry, that's impossible. Lin Yuan indeed knew the importance of this mission. That was why he was so attentive. However, if he really couldn't do it, Lin Yuan wouldn't force himself to do it. After all, he still had the universal scripture. At worst, he could just take a gamble. If he won, he would eat the whole world. If he lost, his soul would scatter. He liked a phrase he had heard in his previous life. A person's entire life was a gamble. Some people got rich and some lost everything. The real winners weren't lucky, but they were able to find the most important one out of countless opportunities, and then bet everything they had on it. Gambling his life for the endless sea? It wasn't worth it. However, for the sake of cultivating the universal scripture, gambling on whether or not the world's will would dare to touch him. This was worth it. Furthermore, the problem of the great old ones was not something that the beasts of the endless sea could face alone. The guardians of the heavenly gate who were watching the show on the Jianghu continent could not escape responsibility. They could indeed comfortably stand at the back and reap the benefits, but they also had to think carefully. If the beasts of the endless sea lost to the great old ones, how should they face the invasion of the aberrations from the entire endless sea? At that time, Lin Yuan could still stand out. After all, with the endless sea as a precedent, even if the guardians of the heavenly gate were unwilling to cooperate with Lin Yuan, they had to obey him. However, if it really came to that step, Lin Yuan would definitely not just pat his butt and do it. He still had to secretly make arrangements to ensure that the great old ones could exterminate the endless sea demonic beasts as quickly as possible and directly threaten the Sky Martial continent. Only then would it be possible to complete the mission. It was still the same sentence. In front of an absolute egoist, don't talk about righteousness and humanity. Those things didn't exist. These beasts of the endless sea were very greedy, but Lin Yuan wasn't a good person either. He couldn't be the embodiment of selfless justice. He could suffer a loss because of his own calculations, but he definitely wouldn't watch others follow behind his butt and wait to reap benefits. He would rather not let anyone get any benefits, but he would first crush those behind his butt to death. I understand the logic, but this Black Jiao, what exactly is he trying to do? An ancestral demon opened his mouth and said. Among the dragon race of the four seas, a young man who had almost condensed a human body flashed in his eyes and said in a deep voice, "This Black Jiao is having a battle of ideas with the aberration. He must know something that we don't. It's even possible that these aberrations were created by him, and we're just taking the blame for him." The young man who spoke was the youngest dragon god of the dragon race of the four seas. Just by looking at his appearance, he was a handsome man. However, he didn't look handsome. His black hair was wrapped tightly around his two horns. Unless his hair was scattered, no one would be able to tell that this young man had the bloodline of the dragon race. Even if that's the case, what does it mean? This blame has already been placed on us. It's not something that we can avoid. Even if there's a problem with this Black Jiao, he's still a member of the dragon race of the four seas. Moreover, the solution to this situation is on him. If you take out your anger on him, you'll only force him to leave the endless sea and leave us here to die. The ancestral demon who asked the question glared at the dragon race youth and growled, "I'm asking what this Black Jiao wants, and what we should do to make him continue to chant that strange language. I'm not here to listen to you shirking your responsibility. If you have the guts, kill the great old ones now. I promise I won't do anything and will even help you kill that Black Jiao. How about it?" "You." The dragon race youth's eyes turned cold, but he forcibly suppressed his temper and didn't lose his temper on the spot. However, when his gaze fell in the direction of Lin Yuan, the jealousy in the dragon race youth's eyes couldn't be concealed. He was 600 years old this year. Ever since he had awakened his spirit, he had cultivated all the way to the ancestral demon realm. It could be said that everything had been smooth sailing. He was known as a peerless genius of the dragon race who was comparable to the ancestral dragons. There were even some dragon bloodline demonic beasts who believed that if his bloodline was as pure as the four ancestral dragons, he might be able to reach a higher realm than the ancestral dragons and become a true immortal existence. He wouldn't have to rely on the worship of the dragon race of the four seas to live. However, since the appearance of Lin Yuan, the title of the #1 genius of the dragon race hadn't fallen on him for a long time. Previously, the Black Jiao had caused a huge ruckus with the dragon palace of the four seas and lost a total of 8 of his 9 sons. Even Ao Siphon and the other evil dragons were turned to the opposite side of the dragon race of the four seas. However, under this kind of irreconcilable hatred, an ancestral dragon actually openly invited Lin Yuan, who was only at the late-stage River Lord realm at that time, to be the 7th dragon god of the Dragon God Temple. What kind of honor was this? What right did that Black Jiao have? Wasn't it just because he was born into a good family and had many opportunities? If those opportunities were given to him, how could he be in such an awkward situation now? How could this ancestral demon dare to reprimand him? Flames of jealousy burned in his heart, and some strange sounds seemed to ring in his ears. However, no one paid attention to this dragon race youth's secret changes. Instead, they were all discussing what the Black Jiao wanted. I think, the ancestral demon who had guessed Lin Yuan's thoughts cleared his throat. After attracting a lot of attention, he said, "The aberrations won't allow an existence like the Black Jiao to suppress them. Very soon, experts will appear to kill the Black Jiao. The Black Jiao should have stopped now because he wants to see our attitude. He wants us to send experts to protect him. Otherwise, he will probably turn around and leave, no longer involving himself in this matter." Chapter 843. The Dragon Tribe youth took a while before he could clearly hear the voice that was so weak that it seemed like it would disperse with a gust of wind. "Let it die. Kill it. As long as it dies, you will still be the #1 genius of the Dragon Tribe. As long as it dies, you will be able to obtain everything it has. At that time, no one will be able to deny your achievements." The voice by his ear kept repeating these words, and the Dragon Tribe youth's eyes began to show signs of struggle. He was very clear what the Black Jiao meant to the Endless Sea. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the only hope for the Endless Sea's demonic beasts to defeat the aberration. If Lin Yuan died in his hands, the entire Endless Sea would not be able to escape a calamity. At that time, the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas would not be able to protect him, they would be the first to hunt him down. But the voice by his ear kept ringing, and it had to be said that every word fell into his heart. He could not even find a reason to reject it. "That's right, as long as I kill the Black Jiao, I will still be the #1 genius of the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas. Even if the ancestor dragon sees me, he will have to treat me with respect. If I can obtain the opportunity from the Black Jiao, then I won't even have to look at the faces of those old fellows. I will become the supreme existence that dominates the Endless Sea. No, not just the Endless Sea, even the Sky Martial Continent will be mine. As long as I kill the Black Jiao, I will obtain everything. What am I still hesitating for?" This time, the voice that rang out was no longer the weak voice by his ear, as if it would be blown away by the wind at any time. These words were his voice. His expression changed, and his eyes flashed as he turned to look at the other ancestor demons. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he heaved a sigh of relief. "Was that my voice just now? That scared me to death. I thought I shouted it out myself." The Dragon Tribe youth heaved a sigh of relief, and at the same time, his heart relaxed. When he turned his head again, in his eyes, there was a faint black line. However, it was just a flash, and no one noticed that there was a hint of hostility in his eyes. "That's reasonable, but the problem is this really what the Black Jiao wants?" A demon ancestor whose eyes were flashing brightly suddenly opened his mouth and said doubtfully, "The Black Flood Dragon has too many secrets. I even suspect that the calamity of our Endless Sea was orchestrated by him. Otherwise, how can we explain why that white-clothed killing god appeared just now and specifically targeted us and didn't even touch a single aberration? With that person's ability, isn't it just a matter of breath?" A second voice was heard. Some ancestral demons thought that Lin Yuan had already shown his strength and value. Next, they should consider how to rope in Lin Yuan instead of continuing to plot behind his back. Another part of the ancestral demons thought that those aberrations were related to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan wanted to use this opportunity to lure the strong ones among them out of the city, then ambush them one by one, and finally unify the entire Endless Sea. The two sides were in a heated argument. In fact, anyone with half a brain would know that the aberration had too many secrets. Lin Yuan might know some of them, but Lin Yuan was not the main culprit of the aberration, because everyone could see that the aberration's ability to distort the minds of other creatures was almost unsolvable. If Lin Yuan wanted to borrow the aberration's power to unify the Endless Sea, there was no need for him to stand out at this time. He only needed to find a place to hide and watch the show. At most, in a dozen years, the Endless Sea's beasts would be completely assimilated by the aberration. This was something that all the Endless Sea's beasts acknowledged. Unless they could think of a way to suppress the aberration's distorting power, they would have no chance of winning the war. Moreover, a dozen years might be a lifetime for an ordinary beast, but for a beast like Lin Yuan, who could be considered to have achieved success in cultivation, it was only a dozen months for a human. It was not a difficult time to endure. Therefore, everyone knew that this argument was in fact just because the aberration's beasts knew that the front line was extremely dangerous. They did not want to put themselves in danger, but sending a few beast kings to protect Lin Yuan might not be useful. Ever since Lin Yuan came to the Endless Sea, how many beast kings had died? "I'll go," Just as the aberration's beasts were still discussing, the Dragon Clan youth gritted his teeth and growled, immediately suppressing the voices of the aberration's discussion. The aberration's beasts all looked at him in surprise. Even the dragon gods of the dragon palaces of the four seas had faces full of disbelief. They were all on the same side. It was public knowledge that this young dragon god was jealous of Black Jiao. It was just that for the sake of face no one exposed this matter. However, at this time this kid should be eager for Black Jiao to die. Why would he take the initiative to ask to protect Black Jiao, who made him burn with jealousy? Did he want to play some tricks on Black Jiao? Or did he want to do it himself? No matter which possibility it was, these dragon gods did not want to see a situation like this. If this kid really thought that he wanted to kill Black Jiao out of jealousy, no matter if he really succeeded or if Black Jiao summoned the White God of Slaughter to start a massacre, it was not a situation they wanted to see. So what if the White God of Slaughter could not break through the Willow Rock region? When the Black Jiao returned to the Jianghu continent, were they going to stay here and wait for death? Didn't you just break through recently? I'm afraid your realm is still unstable. You might not be a match for the aberration's experts. I think we should send someone else. An ancestral dragon glanced at the Dragon Clan youth and said gloomily. The aberration's faces all changed. They had been arguing for so long because they were unwilling to leave the city to protect Lin Yuan. After all, no one knew what kind of experts the aberration had. However, they also knew that when the aberration first appeared, an ancestral dragon went to investigate and suppress it. In the end, that ancestral dragon was never seen again. It was not easy for a hothead to say that he wanted to protect Lin Yuan. In the end, before anyone could react, he was rejected by an ancestral dragon. How the F***ck could this work? Just as the ancestral monster ancestors were about to voice their displeasure, Ancestral Gragon, who had rejected the offer, rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, "My fellow Taoists, you are all extraordinary. The Black Jiao is the only way to break out of this situation, but perhaps there are also some among us who have been distorted by the aberrations. It's just that they are well hidden and have yet to show themselves. Sending that one out alone is unfair to the one who was sent out, and it's also not safe. If something happens, we won't be able to save him in time." It then changed the topic and said in a deep voice, "What I mean is that you should discuss this with your clans. If there are multiple ancestral monster ancestors, send one ancestral monster ancestor. If there's only one ancestral monster ancestor, send several monster kings. What do you think?" Chapter 844. The Ancestral Dragon's arrangement was not biased. The various sea demon clans present did not like to place their lives in the hands of others. If they were unlucky and sent out an existence that had been assimilated by the aberration, killing Lin Yuan's hope, they would not be able to save him in time from the Willowstone Fortress. If that happened, they would have nowhere to cry. If something happened to each sea demon ancestor, although it would be a great blow to their vitality, it would not cause the sea demon clan to decline. If there was only one sea demon ancestor or no sea demon ancestor, sending some sea demon kings to assist would be considered as fulfilling their duties. If anyone dared to stand out at this time, they would be torn apart by the other angry sea demon ancestors. I have no objections. The Dragon Clan youth took a deep breath. He did not hide the dissatisfaction in his eyes, but he still insisted, "Dragon ancestor, since each sea demon ancestor is going to send a sea demon ancestor to protect the sea demon ancestor, I will represent the Four Seas Dragon Clan. Please don't worry. This junior is indeed jealous of the Black Jiao, but I can distinguish between right and wrong. I will not do anything that will anger the heavens." These words were said with sincerity. He was not even afraid that others would be wary of him. He openly said that he was jealous of Lin Yuan, including the dissatisfaction in his eyes. It was more like he was upset that the ancestral dragon did not trust him, and not because of his own plan being ruined. The sea demon ancestor who had seen through Lin Yuan's thoughts spoke again. He said in a deep voice, "The Dragon King is right. If each sea demon ancestor contributes, I dare not say that no one will lose out, but it is definitely the fairest method. However, since the Dragon King also said that there might be aberrations among us, we will settle down 5 miles away from the Black Jiao as a precaution. If anything happens, we can help each other. We can also prevent people with ill intentions from sneaking up on the Black Jiao and assassinating him. I suggest that if anyone crosses these 5 miles for no reason, we will kill them together." "Alright. That's how it should be. Kill them together." As soon as he said that, the other ancestral demon ancestors began to clamor as well. "Damn you. After I kill that black flood dragon and obtain its fortuitous encounter, I'll make sure you die without a burial ground. The dragon tribe youth smiled in agreement as he shot a sinister glance at the sea demon who had made the suggestion. When he turned around, a black, illusory line appeared in his eyes once again. However, this time the black line was clearly a lot more solid, and the hostility in his eyes was even more vigorous. That's interesting. Lin Yuan's gaze shifted slightly as he saw a group of demon ancestors and demon kings walking out of the Willow Stone Fortress. His eyes turned deep and meaningful. His premonition was reminding him that there was a great threat among the demon ancestors and demon kings who came to protect him. However, he did not specifically point out who it was, nor did he mention if there was only one threat. However, he was certain that he would lose his life if he was careless. Who could it be? While Lin Yuan was deep in thought, he found that the demon ancestors and demon kings had stopped at a distance of 5 miles away from him. With him as the center, they formed a circular formation, which was almost airtight. Even if the old rulers appeared, if they couldn't break through the line of defense of these powerhouses, they were destined not to be able to rush in front of him. Therefore, my danger does not come from the experts on the side of the great old ones. Instead, it comes from the fact that there are several existences among this group of demon beasts who want to take the opportunity to kill me. However, the Endless Sea's demon beasts seem to have thought of this as well, so they set a rule early on to stop a certain distance away from me. This also means that whoever comes within 2.5 kilometers of me first is most likely the existence that wants to kill me. If nothing happened, the 2.5 kilometers would be an absolutely safe zone. However, since the other party dared to come out, it was impossible that they were unprepared. Therefore, Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed and he murmured, "The one hiding among them is also a mutant. Since they can't get close to me when nothing happens, then the great old ones will definitely come to create chaos. Once one side can't handle it, the demon beasts in other directions will definitely come to support. Therefore, first of all, we can eliminate the group in front of me. Because of the formation here, the great old ones can't swim or burrow into the ground. They can only come straight from the direction of the battlefield. The people in front of me have no chance to get close to me. They are the first batch of existences to fight." When his gaze fell on the position that was impossible to get close to, Lin Yuan's eyes revealed a touch of helplessness. These ancestral demons and demon kings did not sincerely want to protect him. They only wanted to use him as a trump card to suppress the great old ones. They did not want anything to happen to him so easily. Although they were here, they did not put in any effort. The first to face the enemy were mostly the weaker ancestral demons or demon kings. In other words, the people who wanted to kill him were existences with some weight in the Endless Sea. He could not tell anything just by looking at their positions. After all, Lin Yuan could only be sure that those who were close to the battlefield did not want to kill him, but he could not be sure that those who were close to the Willowstone Fortress wanted to kill him. This was very troublesome. However, with the arrival of these guards, Lin Yuan began the battle of ideas again. As he spoke, the sea demon warriors at the front line once again suppressed the mutants. However, this time the situation did not reverse. Because as Lin Yuan spoke, some of the demon ancestors and demon kings in the guard team showed painful expressions. They roared and rushed toward Lin Yuan's area. However, before they could get far, they were stopped by the other guards. After a fight, they were killed on the spot. At this point, it was certain that there were no more mutants in Guard Team 5. Boom! Along with a loud bang, no one knew what had happened on the front lines. All of a sudden, a huge smoke screen was lifted. All kinds of dust, rocks, and flesh flew in all directions. There was also the scene of siren warriors being sent flying. It was a spectacular sight. There was no doubt that this was the attack of a great old one. Even some of the powerful demon ancestors had grave expressions on their faces. It was obvious that the attacker was not weak. When the dust and smoke dissipated, a group of demon beasts exclaimed. Although the great old one who attacked was covered with all kinds of sarcomas and tentacles, and even the gray cuticle had covered its original scales and skin, they could still recognize at a glance that this guy was one of the 4 ancestral dragons of the Dragon Temple. Since the mutants appeared, it disappeared without a trace. They did not expect it to be distorted into a mutant. Blackwater Dragon King, please protect yourself. The ancestral dragons are all-powerful beings who have survived since ancient times. They have many means. We have to fight this ancestral dragon with all our strength. I'm afraid it's difficult to be distracted. A demon ancestor roared loudly and took the lead to rush toward the mutant ancestral dragon. Chapter 845. Lin Yuan looked at the ancestral demon rushing toward the aberrant ancestral dragon, and a fierce look flashed across his eyes. Something was wrong. He still felt like there was a dagger at his back. The existence that wanted to kill him was still alive, and had not been eliminated like the other aberrants. It was still lurking among the guards, waiting for the right time to attack. But the problem was, you're not an aberrant, yet you want to kill me? Are you crazy? Lin Yuan was speechless. The situation was already so bad. Without his help, the demon beasts of the Endless Sea would be destroyed sooner or later. Why would there be some normal demon beast that wanted to kill him at this time? This was not the way to kill a donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. The donkey had not even started to grind yet. Huh. Lin Yuan's face suddenly changed. He turned his head and stared at an existence that looked no different from a human being. Since it was not an aberrant, it did not care about the overall situation and wanted to kill him at this time. It was nothing more than a personal grudge. Lin Yuan did not dare to say how many friends he had in the Endless Sea, but he also did not have many enemies. If he had to say that he had a grudge, perhaps it was only the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Could it be this guy? Seeing Lin Yuan's gaze fall on him, the Dragon Clan youth was slightly startled at first, and then there was a hint of panic in his eyes. After all, he was only an ancestral demon. If he was exposed at this time, his fate would not be much better than those aberrants who could not hold back. But how did the Black Jiao discover him? Was there something wrong with his disguise? It's you. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Although the Dragon Clan youth lowered his head after being startled for a moment, Lin Yuan still saw a flash of panic in his eyes through the eye of God. The motive was also right. He did have some enmity with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even if an ancestral dragon threw out an olive branch, that was the ancestral dragon's own opinion, and did not represent the opinions of the other members of the Dragon Clan. Moreover, Lin Yuan had not accepted the olive branch, so it was normal for members of the Dragon Clan to want to kill him. Among those who had indirectly died at Lin Yuan's hands, there might be existences that this guy valued very much. Otherwise, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas still did not give up and wanted to get the method of bloodline purification from him. On the other side, the mutated ancestral dragon was clearly not to be trifled with. A large group of ancestral demons and demon kings joined forces, but they were still unable to gain any advantage over it. After all, this mutated ancestral dragon had not only inherited the abilities of an ancestral dragon, but also the terrifying physique of a mutated being. Even the thick water squeezed out of the sarcomas and the constantly whipping tentacles could easily take the life of a demon king. More and more ancestral demons rushed to the area where the mutated ancestral dragon was and joined the battle, including the Dragon Clan youth standing at the very back. He also pretended that he only had eyes for the mutated ancestral dragon and rushed forward, but his path of advance was clearly aimed at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan quietly moved to the side, but found that his opponent was still not letting him go. He also adjusted his position and looked like he was determined to kill Lin Yuan. You're courting death. Lin Yuan looked at the Dragon Clan youth with a gloomy gaze and cursed in his heart. Is there something wrong with this guy's brain? At this time he still wants to kill me. Is he really not worried that the Endless Sea will be destroyed? What is the attitude of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas? With the status of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, if they were determined to kill me, they would not have made such a big fuss. They only needed to send this Dragon Clan youth to protect me and find an opportunity to end me. But if the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas had no ill intentions towards me, they would most likely send another ancestral demon to carry out the task of protecting me, and not this guy. Run. Lin Yuan swung his big tail, rapped Tai Mu, who was closely guarding him, and quickly left the area. He bypassed the dragon youth and rushed toward the Willowstone Fortress. Although his mouth still did not stop, the suppression was not as strong as it was at the beginning as he made such a move to escape from the battlefield. Although the distortion power of the mutants had not yet recovered, the old masters hiding behind the scenes could already command the frontline mutants to fight, so the situation once again fell into a stalemate. Damn it, why? Isn't this the revenge of killing one's father? In the eye of the divine god, the Dragon Clan youth was still following closely behind him, as if it was time to shed all pretense of cordiality. He was not afraid of others discovering anything unusual and only cared about chasing after Lin Yuan. Even if Lin Yuan ran to the ends of the earth, he would kill Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan really could not understand how he had formed such a big grudge with this guy. But soon, the Dragon Clan youth realized that he had left the formation. When the other ancestral demons were rushing to the front line to fight the mutated ancestral dragons, he was chasing after Lin Yuan. It was inevitable that the other ancestral demons would be suspicious of him. The Dragon Clan youth's heart sank slightly, but his reaction was extremely fast. He shouted, "Blackwater Dragon King, please stay. The situation on the battlefield is very strange now. Please don't run around. If anything happens to you, the Endless Sea will be destroyed. Please come to me quickly, I will protect you and not let the mutated beings hurt you." Seeing that Lin Yuan did not listen at all, he could not help but show a touch of anxiety in his eyes. He shouted, "Blackwater Dragon King, I admit that there are mutated beings in our team, but haven't those guys been dealt with? Besides, you and I are both members of the Dragon Bloodline Demon Beast. Even if you don't trust the other demon beasts of the Endless Sea, don't tell me you don't trust your own brothers?" Good acting. Lin Yuan almost believed it if it was not for the uneasy feeling in his back. Seeing that the Black Jiao did not stop, the Dragon Clan youth's eyes turned cold. After all, if the Black Jiao escaped into the Willowstone Fortress, with the protection of the Dragon Temple and the other ancestral demons, he would not have the chance to attack even if he wanted to. Besides, the Black Jiao was already interested in him. Such an opportunity would not come again. No. Today he had to kill this Black Jiao no matter what. Take back everything that he deserved. This thought rose in his mind. "Blackwater Dragon King, I'm warning you one last time. Come to me immediately, I will protect you. You refused to cooperate with our inspection before, so I have the right to suspect that you are also a mutated being. Stop right there, you are not allowed to run into the Willowstone Fortress." The Dragon Clan youth did not care about holding back in his desperation. He burst out at full speed and even opened his mouth to spit out a dragon's breath made of demonic power. Without any warning, he sprayed it directly at Lin Yuan. Chapter 846. If the dragon breath of an ancestral monster realm dragon was not handled properly, it could instantly destroy an entire city. Lin Yuan's soul almost left his body when he was shrouded by the dragon's breath. Almost without thinking, he circulated all the demonic energy in his body and mobilized the water around him to rush toward the dragon's breath. However, when the two forces collided, the water flow Lin Yuan controlled was instantly dispersed, and the demonic energy contained in it was also instantly evaporated by the dragon's breath. With the gap of two great realms, the demonic energy of the two sides could not be compared in terms of quality or quantity. Coupled with the fact that Lin Yuan had previously exchanged blows with the demonic beast with the bloodline of Wu Zhiqi and hired a hired thug to show off his muscles, although Lin Yuan's Jia's flame power had not been depleted, he really could not use any decent means. If he were to rely on his own strength to deal with this dragon youth, he would probably die on the spot in less than 3 moves. However, the timing of the appearance of the aberrant ancestral dragon was too ingenious, directly attracting and restraining most of the ancestral monster realm experts. The remaining ones were not qualified to intervene in a battle of this level and could only cooperate with the various monster kings to eliminate the aberrant ancestral dragon. Even if they wanted to help, they were really no match for the dragon youth. Moreover, there was a deeper scheme involved. Who knew whether the dragon youth's killing of Black Jiao was ordered by the Dragon Temple? Even if it was not ordered by the Dragon Temple, so what? This dragon tribe youth didn't care about the bigger picture. Attacking the Black Flood Dragon at a time like this would incur the wrath of the masses. It didn't matter if he succeeded or not. If he succeeded, the sea monster clans would denounce him, and the dragon tribe of the Four Seas would have to pay a huge price to appease the masses. Furthermore, the dragon tribe of the Four Seas would lose a descendant with limitless potential like the Black Flood Dragon. It was a win-win situation for them. But what if he failed? The Black Jiao would also be standing on the opposite side of the Four Seas Dragon Clan. If he invited 1 or 2 more helpers to deal with the Four Seas Dragon Clan in a fit of anger, even without the hidden danger of the great old ruler, the Four Seas Dragon Clan could forget about continuing to be the overlord of the Endless Sea. The deep-rooted bad habits of living creatures were vividly displayed at this moment. Indeed, Lin Yuan was a very important means to break the stalemate, but the Four Seas Dragon Clan had single-handedly resisted the aberrant for so long. If they did not have a few things that could suppress the aberrant, they would have been unable to contain the fire long ago and would not wait for Black Jiao to reveal the aberrant matter. If other ancestral monster ancestors made a move, they would certainly go forward to stop them. However, they were happy to see the dragon race of the Four Seas take action. After all, the dragon race of the Four Seas would be the first to suffer. Beast? An ancestral dragon ancestor dragon clans, dragon clans, and dragon clan, the place where Lin Yuan and the old ruler had a battle of ideas was actually not far away. It was just a little bit out of the control range of the Willowstone Fortress. With the strength of the Ancestor Demon Realm, he could quickly arrive there. However, one of the parties involved was also in the Ancestor Demon Realm. When it arrived, the Dragon Clan youth would have to make at least 3 to 5 moves. If Lin Yuan couldn't withstand it, he would end up dead on the spot. Black Jiao. I told you to stop right there. The Dragon Clan's youth's face was gloomy, as if he did not expect Lin Yuan to not even dare to fight and only run away. The anger in his heart burned even more. He felt that Lin Yuan was looking down on him and was unwilling to fight with him. Before the first dragon breath was completely resolved by Lin Yuan, it opened its mouth again and spat out 3 dragon breaths in a row. After these 3 dragon breaths, the demonic power on its body was weakened, and its demonic power, which was as majestic as the sea, was almost consumed by 2/3 at this moment, without any leeway left. This was no longer a simple attempt to kill Lin Yuan. Under the devastation of these 4 dragon breaths, Lin Yuan would not even have a corpse left if he was not careful. As Lin Yuan swam rapidly, he saw an ancestral dragon rushing towards him with a face full of shock and anger. He did not sense the existence of any threat, so he understood that this ancestral dragon did not want him to die here, so he specially came to rescue him. As long as he could hold on until this ancestral dragon rushed to his side, the rest would be easy. With a chance of survival, the despair in Lin Yuan's heart faded a little, and he continued to swim with Tai Mu. It was not that he had to drag Tai Mu with him, but at present the Brave Crab clan was a good helper. He could not just leave Tai Mu to fend for himself and only care about escaping. In addition, if things really got out of hand, he could directly throw Tai Mu out to block the opponent's attacks. At least he could buy a few more breaths of time to ensure his safety. But now that he thought about it, the actions of this Dragon Clan youth were strange. He was clearly rational, otherwise he would not have endured for so long without making a move. Moreover, after making a move, he kept asking Lin Yuan to come to his side so that he could protect Lin Yuan and dispel the vigilance of those ancestral demons who did not have time to investigate the situation here. Even when he made a move, he went all out every time, clearly not intending to give Lin Yuan any chance to make a comeback. However, it was impossible for a rational existence not to see the importance of the ideological conflict between him and the old ruler in this war. Then, why did he have to kill him and why did he have to do it at this time? Was there any benefit to him? No. Was there any benefit to the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas? There was none. If he killed Lin Yuan at this time, the final beneficiary would definitely be the old ruler's side. However, when he was engaged in the ideological conflict earlier, some of the aberrations hidden among the guards could not hold back and removed their disguises to try to kill Lin Yuan. At that time, Lin Yuan was also observing each of the demonic beasts through the eye of God. At that time, this Dragon Clan youth did not show any discomfort at all. This was unreasonable. As long as he was influenced by the old ruler, no matter how shrewd he was, it was useless. Under this kind of ideological conflict, it was impossible to hold back. Therefore, this Dragon Clan youth was most likely not an aberration. But the question was that really the case? If that was the case, the timing of the appearance of the aberration ancestral dragon was too coincidental. As soon as it appeared, it stalled most of the experts on his side. At that time, the Dragon Clan youth did not look surprised at all, as if he had already known this would happen. At that time he had been staring at Lin Yuan. Although he was moving forward, he was not moving closer to the aberration ancestral dragon, but toward himself. What kind of problem had occurred in between? What was the relationship between the old ruler and this Dragon Clan youth? If he did not figure this out, Lin Yuan felt that he could fall into a dead end at any time. Chapter 847. The Great Old Ones were not scary because Lin Yuan only needed to have a battle of ideals to test who was abnormal and who was normal. However, the Dragon Race youth was obviously colluding with the Great Old Ones, but he could not even test out the battle of ideals. He was like a sharp blade hanging above Lin Yuan's head. If he could not see through this method, any demonic beast around him in the future could become a knife for the Great Old Ones to kill him. This time he was prepared, but he still ended up in this situation. What if he was not prepared next time? With a belly full of worries, Lin Yuan clenched his teeth and crazily swung his flood dragon body, throwing out undercurrents at the bottom of the sea. However, they could not even stop the 4 dragon breaths. Bang, bang, bang. 3 muffled sounds were heard. Lin Yuan only saw 3 pure white scales flying over his head. For some reason, when Lin Yuan looked at the 3 scales, countless emotions suddenly appeared in his heart. There was intimacy, reverence, and even a trace of fear hidden in his blood. These are dragon scales? And they are scales from a true dragon. As everyone knew, dragons were born to be extremely powerful, but every creature had a weakness. For example, the reverse scale of a dragon was not the reverse scale that people in his previous life would say, touch the reverse scale of a dragon and you'll die. Instead, it was the only weak spot on a real dragon's body. A young dragon was not considered powerful. In the great wasteland world, there were even some powerful demonic beasts that specialized in hunting young dragons. However, when a true dragon grew up, its scales would be hard to injure. The swords and sabers here were not weapons in the hands of mortals. In the era when true dragons roamed, no matter if it was a transformed demon or an ancient human, they did not use ordinary items. They were either innate spiritual treasures or acquired spiritual treasures. However, even if these powerful treasures were equipped, they might not be able to hurt a true dragon. Looking at Lin Yuan's flood dragon scales, it was clear. Even a flood dragon had such a terrifying defense, let alone a true dragon whose bloodline was much higher than a flood dragon's. However, there was a reverse scale below the neck of a true dragon, which was the only vital point of a true dragon. It was even weaker than a mortal's flesh and blood. That was why there was a saying in his previous life, touch the reverse scale of a dragon and you will die. This wasn't an act of pretentiousness but rather a warning. It was also an instinctive defense of one's vitals. When you touched a true dragon's reverse scale, no matter what you were thinking, you could easily kill the true dragon. Unless the true dragon was willing to let you touch its reverse scale, it would be an irreconcilable grudge. Of course, even at the level of a true dragon, some biological habits were still very difficult to change. For example, the pain of molting was something that they had to go through every time they grew up. If they didn't have the strength to break through the shackles of their old skin and scales, they would be suffocated to death. Therefore, the older a dragon was, the stronger it was. Whether it was their strength or their scales, they were constantly growing, and the probability of death was also greatly increased. Coupled with the powerful bloodline of the dragons, their reproductive ability was also lower. That was why the population of this race was dwindling and even completely faded from the world stage. However, even if they molted, the reverse scale wouldn't be shed. There was only one possibility for the reverse scale to fall off, and that was the molting of a true dragon. The true dragon was a race that was full of treasures. Even the reverse scale, after leaving the body, could become an extremely hard magic treasure through special refining methods. It was even harder than ordinary dragon scales. However, this thing was basically left behind by the deceased dragons for their descendants. If a grand cultivator killed a dragon, he would definitely not be able to obtain the reverse scale. This was because if it wasn't voluntary, as the life source of the dragon dissipated, this reverse scale would also collapse on its own. This was all from the memories of the true dragon bloodline. The 3 white reverse scales represented the 3 true dragons that had fallen in this world. As expected of a large race that had escaped from the untainted world. Even if they had fallen to the point where they had to fight for food with the demonic beasts of this world, their foundation was still not to be underestimated. Several balls of dragon breath collided with the 3 reverse scale magic treasures one after another, but the impact was not even as great as the ancestral dragon's magic treasure. It was like a drop of rain falling into a bonfire, instantly evaporating into nothingness. What an evil creature, you actually dared to deceive us. The ancestral dragon's figure swept past Lin Yuan. His eyes were wide open and the color of his pupils turned from black to gold, just like the eyes of a true dragon. Golden dragon eyes were the standard of a true dragon, but the standard also meant that it was the weakest type. For example, a true dragon that was good at controlling water would usually have blue eyes. A true dragon that was good at condensing ice would have white eyes. A true dragon that was good at poison would have dark green eyes, and a true dragon that was good at controlling would have dark green eyes. Only those that didn't have any special abilities would have golden eyes, just like the scales turning into gold. Ordinary people would only praise Lin Yuan's unusual pupils as beautiful. However, in the true dragon race he was definitely a gifted genius. Because this meant that Lin Yuan was good at controlling water and condensing ice. If he could purify his bloodline to the level of a true dragon in the future, he could even start to study the Tao of water and Tao of ice. By then, his battle prowess would be more than 10 times stronger than those of the same level. Among the true dragons, if one's pupils and scales were golden, then they were considered to be of average talent. Therefore, although this ancestral dragon was a true dragon that was still roaming the world, he would usually use illusions to change the color of his pupils to black. After all, golden eyes were nothing short of a disgrace to a true dragon. But now he was enraged to the extreme. Naturally, he couldn't care less about concealing his true strength. Naturally, the color of his pupils was revealed. Seeing an ancestral dragon blocking his path, a trace of embarrassment flashed across the ancestral dragon's face. He shouted, "Old thing, you all value this Black Jiao so much, but why don't you think about it? When has this Black Jiao ever thought of himself as a member of the true dragon race? Previously, old ancestor Ao Xian even made an exception and invited him to stay in the Dragon God Temple as the seventh dragon god, but in the end, the Black Jiao rejected him without even thinking about it. What benefits do you all have for our true dragon race if you protect such a trash?" Speaking until here, greed flashed across his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "If you all don't want to be the bad guy, then I will be. Wait until I capture this Black Jiao, peel off his skin and break his bones, extract his divine soul, and soak him in dragon's breath day and night. I don't have to worry that he won't hand over his opportunities and secret techniques. At that time, our true dragon race will definitely rise to another level. Not to mention continuing to dominate the endless sea, it won't be a problem to unify the entire Sky Martial continent." Lunatic. Lin Yuan couldn't help but think of this evaluation in his heart. The true dragon race of the four seas had dominated the endless sea for so many years. Wasn't the younger generation of the true dragon race being protected too well? This guy was already in the ancestral demon realm, how could he still speak and act so childishly? Extracting his soul and torturing it so that he could obtain the opportunities and secret techniques he possessed. Chapter 848. Were the opportunities and secret techniques on his body good? The answer was yes. After all, they were all good things produced by the system. Even the martial skills and cultivation techniques that he used Guan Zhaoshan's body to cultivate were all top-quality goods that other hosts had plundered from various worlds. Although the Joss flame power was not little, in the system's eyes, to be able to be called second-rate was not an ordinary thing. Most of the cultivation techniques in the Jianghu world were seen by the system. In exchange, it was probably a sneer. It was too lazy to even evaluate them as second-rate. Was there anyone who coveted such good things? There were many who coveted them. Ever since Lin Yuan stood out, regardless of whether it was his unrivaled methods or his cultivation speed that put countless people to shame, he had undoubtedly attracted the attention of countless greedy eyes. However, by chance, Lin Yuan had wrapped himself in the tiger skin of the demon court. Coincidentally, in the ancient times of this world, there was indeed a group of experts from the great desolate world who had formed the demon court. They had left an extremely strong impression on the natives of the Jianghu world. Even though the demon court had been destroyed for countless years, as long as they discovered something related to the demon court, countless almighty people had no choice but to pay attention to it. Most of the troubles that Lin Yuan encountered were actually set up by those almighty people behind the scenes. They wanted to test Lin Yuan's limits and at the same time, force out the trump cards in Lin Yuan's hands one by one. When Lin Yuan was at his wit's end, they would bare their fangs and devour Lin Yuan, who could be called a sumptuous feast. Now that his cultivation was getting higher and higher, there were more and more experts eyeing him. The tiger skin of the demon court was getting thinner and thinner. There were even some existences that the demon court could not suppress who were itching to make a move on Lin Yuan. For example, the people behind Spiritual Master He. After knowing Lin Yuan's goal, they were still unwilling to take away the disciples under Spiritual Master He. Weren't they supporting Spiritual Master He? They wanted to use this evil cultivator's mysterious and unfathomable methods to test Lin Yuan's worth. Therefore Lin Yuan gave them face, and slapped their faces. He even threatened to kick them out of the game. Although this move was arrogant, it had to be done. Those people were eyeing Lin Yuan covetously for two reasons. First, for his secret. Second, after reaching a certain level, cultivation resources needed to keep up. Even if it was just a Dao initiation realm cultivator, the amount of resources needed for one day's cultivation could bankrupt a third-rate sect. Lin Yuan could have given up on these resources in the past, but not now. He had enough strength, and there was no need for him to support those vermin that he might not even be able to defeat. Although he had the system and could steadily improve without these resources, he still had a large group of people under him. If he didn't think of ways to accumulate resources now, when their strength increased, they would all go hungry. However, Lin Yuan's move was indeed a little too overbearing. Although the Heavenly Gate Guardians with higher cultivation levels couldn't make a move, they couldn't help but secretly think. Now that Lin Yuan had kicked out a Dao initiation realm cultivator, when he broke through, Would he kick out a Supreme Realm cultivator? If he took another step forward, wouldn't it be the other way around? Wouldn't he reach out and ask for things from them? Ever since the fisherman's son could accurately find him in the endless sea despite knowing nothing about him, Lin Yuan knew that there were probably countless powerful people secretly spying on him. Therefore, when he received the power of 3 million incense sticks, he did not hesitate at all and directly hired a powerful helper to slaughter the endless sea monsters who did not know what was good for them. Firstly, it was to lay the foundation for his next plan. Secondly, it was to intimidate the guardians of the Heaven Gate. Lin Yuan knew that the weight of the demon court was no longer enough to intimidate these greedy people, so he decisively told them that he didn't have the support of the demon court behind him. However, the helper he pulled in clearly proved that his backing was even greater than the demon court. Of course, the gap between the realms was there. Lin Yuan didn't know how many famous Heavenly Gate guardians the man in the white coat killed in the void, and how many big shots who were lucky enough to survive were scared witless. Most of them even felt that they didn't have to be enemies with Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan only wanted to express that he would accept as many methods as possible within the rules. However, he could flip the table at any time to bully others. If they didn't want him to have an easy time, then no one would have an easy time. After showing off his muscles, although he didn't dare to say that his path would be unobstructed, but for a long time, no one would dare to use such methods to bully others. If they wanted his things, they would have to sit down and gamble. The winner would take all, or the loser would have nothing. Those who should be thinking about Lin Yuan would definitely continue to think about Lin Yuan. It was just that they didn't dare to break the rules in a short period of time, in case Lin Yuan went on a killing spree again. As for when they walked out of the psychological shadow brought by the man in the white coat, it was hard to say if they would still be a match for Lin Yuan. But what if Lin Yuan's opportunity fell into the hands of the natives of the Sky Martial World? Then it would be a big joke. Although these natives came and went and probably hid many trump cards in private, the real gap between them was not big. If they fought with their lives on the line, they would still be able to fight to the death with other forces of the same level. Although the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas was strong, but if they obtained Lin Yuan's opportunity, it would definitely attract the attention of other forces. Wasn't this Dragon Clan youth afraid that this sweet potato would be scalded? Even if the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas acted high and mighty in the beginning, they only dared to ask for Lin Yuan's method to purify his blood vessels. At the same time, they coveted Lin Yuan's territory and foundation in the Sky Martial continent. No one dared to ask Lin Yuan to hand over all his secrets. They only dared to eat the things that the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas could eat. You want everything? Then you have to die. Bastard. Shut up. Zhu Long, who had protected Lin Yuan, was so angry that his expression became distorted. He stared fiercely at the Dragon Clan youth, wishing that he could tear this thing to pieces to vent his anger. Did he really think that the walls had no ears? Just based on these words, Zhu Long felt that a blood-red danger word had appeared above his head. If it really came to that point, Lin Yuan would definitely want to exterminate the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Today he might really be able to dig out a part of his secrets. Then, what awaited the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would be the encirclement and annihilation of the various forces. The entire clan would be buried with Lin Yuan because of this guy's greed. Blackwater Dragon King, you must be joking. Zhu Long bowed to Lin Yuan and said in a deep voice, "My Dragon Clan of the Four Seas has not taught properly. I hope that sire will not bicker with a junior. Leave this matter to my Divine Dragon Palace. I will definitely give sire a satisfactory answer." Chapter 849. Lin Yuan nodded slightly, agreeing to this matter. He was not a gentleman who was magnanimous. Although he was not on good terms with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, he had never thought of wiping out the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. In any case, they would have to pay for their own stupidity and greed. Instead of venting his anger, he might as well take the opportunity to set up a plan and clean up a portion of those who were not beneficial to the overall situation. He would take the opportunity to control the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and make these arrogant demonic beasts his subordinates, bringing him real gold and silver. Although the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce was a huge gold-swallowing beast, the market was always saturated. Now that the income was gradually stabilizing, it was no longer as profitable as it was at the beginning. However, the Endless Sea was a treasure trove. The various resources cultivated here, if brought to the Jianghu continent, would probably be more valuable than the spiritual items in the Hengduan mountain range. After all, although it was dangerous to enter the Hengduan mountain range to collect spiritual items, it was not completely impossible with cultivation and experience. However, the treasures in the endless sea, even if one came alive, they might not be able to return alive. Reforming the law, promoting construction, cultivating cultivators and demonic beasts, these simple words meant the consumption of countless resources. Now it could barely support the consumption of the northern frontier. However, as its territory expanded, it would inevitably gradually lose its power. It could not possibly swallow the entire Shinwu dynasty and end up treating the other places as a burden, and still focus on developing the northern frontier, right? Old thing, you speak as if you are sure to eat me up. The Dragon Clan youth put his hands behind his back and looked at the ferocious dragon head that was filled with anger. He laughed disdainfully and said in a deep voice, "This young master is the #1 genius of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas since ancient times. If I had the same noble bloodline as you, by now, I would have already stepped into the realm above the ancestor demon realm. You old things only know how to make progress despite having a tyrannical bloodline. Do you think that just because people call you Dragon God, you are really the Dragon God? What a joke." The ancestral Dragon narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "I originally thought that you were just jealous of the Black Jiao, which led to the birth of an inner demon. I wanted to see if you could be saved. I didn't expect that you weren't just dissatisfied with the Black Jiao, who was more talented and had more opportunities than you. You must have been dissatisfied with my Dragon Clan of the Four Seas for a long time, right?" Speaking up to here, it changed the topic and said in a sad tone, "Our 4-Sea Dragon Clan has a bad reputation in the Endless Sea. Many demonic beasts say that our Dragon Clan only values bloodline. Those with noble bloodline can do whatever they want, and those with inferior bloodline can only be slaves. This kind of atmosphere is brought up by you guys who have rotten roots, right? Bloodline? If bloodline could explain everything, how could this world belong to the human race?" As the ancestral Dragon's words fell, even Lin Yuan couldn't help but be slightly moved. The reason why humans could become the protagonists of heaven and earth was not that they were favored by heaven and earth. It was because they struggled in a harsh environment and constantly worked hard for a better future. They tried to become stronger again and again until they defeated all the different species and became the supreme ruler. Not many people could see through this, and even fewer people were willing to admit it. Those different species who were defeated by humans always liked to attribute all of this to the fact that humans were favored by fate and were the protagonists of heaven and earth. The powerful different species were just whetstones that humans used to sharpen themselves. They resented the unfairness of heaven and earth, but were unwilling to admit that humans had paid a lot of blood and effort in those dark years in exchange for everything that they had today. It had to be said that this kind of guy who only talked about bloodline was really disgusting. A powerful bloodline was indeed enviable, but he couldn't say that his bloodline wasn't noble enough because he couldn't make any progress. Wasn't this a case of cerebral palsy? What kind of bloodline could humans have? Why were there always strong human beings? At this moment, the expression on Lin Yuan's face relaxed slightly. When his gaze fell on the Dragon Clan youth, there was already a hint of killing intent. Connecting it to his previous conjecture and the ancestral Dragon's words, Lin Yuan finally understood why the Dragon Clan youth had pursued him so relentlessly and insisted on killing him at this time even though he hadn't been transformed into an aberrant. Moreover, the Great Old One was still doing his best to cooperate with him and create opportunities for him. This guy was indeed bewitched. But he hadn't been transformed into an aberrant. From the ancestral Dragon's previous words, it could be inferred that the Dragon Clan youth was very jealous of him. Other than Lin Yuan, who knew that he was a cheater, the other cultivators and monsters all felt that Lin Yuan could grow so quickly because he had a great opportunity. Before Lin Yuan appeared, the Dragon Clan youth was the #1 genius of the Four Seas Dragon Clan. After Lin Yuan appeared, the title of #1 genius naturally fell to Lin Yuan. Even if Lin Yuan wasn't from the Four Seas Dragon Clan, who asked him to have the bloodline of the Dragon Clan? Under this sense of disparity, it was normal for the Dragon Clan youth to be dissatisfied with him. In addition, he was a bloodline believer. He believed that Lin Yuan's bloodline was inferior to his, so his aptitude was naturally inferior to his. The reason why he could be where he was today was all because of the opportunity that Lin Yuan had. Thus, malice was born. The strange existence on the side of the Great Old One's side undoubtedly grasped this point and bewitched him, provoking his inner demon. After provoking the Dragon Clan youth's killing intent and greed, the Great Old One didn't aberrate him, but quietly withdrew. That was why when Lin Yuan was having a battle of ideals, the Dragon Clan youth didn't show the slightest discomfort. The methods of these Great Old Ones were indeed strange and vicious. If it wasn't for the unseen sense of danger reminding him, he might have really fallen for it. Who would have thought that the Great Old One's killing move against him wasn't the aberrant ancestral Gregon from the start, but a Dragon Clan member who was plagued by inner demons? After understanding the key point, Lin Yuan's expression became better. Although he was more and more vigilant about the strange methods of the Great Old One, in a sense, as long as he maintained enough vigilance and stayed away from these guys who might give birth to inner demons, at least he wouldn't fall into the situation where he was crazily being chased by the Dragon Clan youth like today. If it wasn't for him revealing his trump card that could flip the table, and expressing that if the Endless Sea's demon beasts weren't willing to help, he would directly leave, and didn't really fight with the Dragon Clan youth. Instead, he realized that there was something wrong with the Dragon Clan youth and fled in the direction of the Willowstone Fortress before the other party made a move. Most likely, someone had already seen through his weakness and might want to make a move on him soon. Chapter 850. Old thing, don't talk nonsense. If you want to fight, just do it. You always say that you can't do this or that. If you make a mistake, you're directly thrown into the evil dragon pool and imprisoned. Some people are even imprisoned for life. You treat your people so coldly and ruthlessly, but you still say that it's for the good of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas. Bullshit. I say you're all bullshit. If the dragon tribe of the Four Seas wants to become stronger, we have to plunder resources and opportunities. Only when we're really strong, we don't have to care about the guardians of the heavenly gates. Can't you understand this? If we follow your train of thought, it won't take long for the Endless Sea to become like the Hungduan mountain range. We'll become animals reared by the guardians of the heavenly gates. When that time comes, they can kill and slaughter us as they wish. What can you do? It's useless for you to rope in the Black Jiao. You can't get the things on the Black Jiao. At this time, what you should do is to rob and interrogate. As long as we can get the Black Jiao's opportunity, the dragon tribe of the Four Seas will be the most powerful existence in the world in less than 100 years. Don't you know how to cherish such a good opportunity in front of you? Ah. No, it's not that you don't know how to cherish it. It's not that you don't know how to do it. You just want to keep your hypocritical face. Since that's the case, I'll be the bad guy. I'll take the Black Jiao's opportunity. Why? Why do you make it seem like I'm betraying the dragon tribe of the Four Seas? The dragon tribe youth's face was full of arrogance. His skin and flesh quickly broke open, revealing a huge body that was not inferior to the ancestral Gregon's. The two huge creatures directly faced each other in the air. At the same time, he roared angrily, "You're the ones who are wrong. Not me." The ancestral Gregon was silent. He kept opening his mouth, but it was as if someone was strangling his throat. He could not say a word and could only look at the dragon tribe youth in silence. The dragon tribe of the Four Seas was indeed very powerful. In addition to their low reproduction rate, every demonic beast with the dragon tribe's bloodline was protected like a plant in a greenhouse. They only knew how to absorb nutrients in a comfortable environment, but once in the outside world they would probably die very quickly. Yes, that's right, Lin Yuan does have a great opportunity on him, but who can guarantee that Lin Yuan will hand it over? Even if Lin Yuan handed over a part of it, who could guarantee that it was complete and could be completed quickly? Unless Lin Yuan was willing to impart all of this to the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, all of this would bring about the destruction of the entire tribe. After obtaining Lin Yuan's fortuitous encounter, would the dragon race of the Four Seas need 100 years to grow before they could become the most powerful race in the world? Not necessarily. This period of time could be longer or it could be shorter. However, what was certain was that no matter if it was the other demonic beasts in the Endless Sea or the human practitioners among the guardians of the Heaven's Gate, no one would give them the time and opportunity to grow. If the dragon clan of the Four Seas did not hand over the things they had obtained, their clan would be exterminated overnight. However, if they had handed over these things, then why did they have to interrogate Lin Yuan in the first place? If they befriended Lin Yuan at this time and waited for Lin Yuan to grow and show some goodwill to the dragon race of the Four Seas, it would be a great opportunity for the entire dragon race of the Four Seas. Lin Yuan and the dragon race of the Four Seas did have some conflicts, but at the end of the day Lin Yuan was still a demonic beast. Once he reached the true peak, he would definitely have to deal with the true experts among the human practitioners. At that time, if both sides did not get along well, a great war would break out. Among the demonic beasts, the only ones qualified to participate in this war would be the dragon race of the Four Seas. If Lin Yuan wanted to support the forces under his command, could he expect the northern frontier to slowly grow? Lin Yuan was not that foolish, and neither was the dragon race of the Four Seas. Only this fool in front of him stubbornly believed in his own theory. Sigh. The ancestral Gragon sighed softly and said with pity, "You have fallen to this state today because us seniors have spoiled you too much. Today I will personally end you to prevent you from making more mistakes and bringing disaster to the entire dragon race of the Four Seas. Let's fight." Lin Yuan had originally thought that the following battle would be a scene of various techniques and magic treasures flying around, but in reality, the two enormous dragons were like the most primitive of beasts. Their bodies were entwined together, their dragon heads constantly moving as they tore at each other's flesh. Even their dragon claws were clawing and slapping as they constantly attacked each other. There was nothing fancy about the battle between the two ancestral Gragon dragons. Every time they attacked, a spray of golden blood mixed with minced flesh would erupt. As a spectator, Lin Yuan had 3 reverse scales to protect him, so he was not afraid of being torn apart by the shockwaves of the battle. However, as he watched, the light in Lin Yuan's eyes gradually dimmed as he fell into a mysterious state. What was the Great Tao? The Great Tao was the simplest. The humans and monsters that Lin Yuan had seen before all liked to use some fancy techniques to fight, but now, these two creatures that could be said to be the strongest among all the creatures that Lin Yuan had seen before, with the exception of the white-robed man, were still using their claws and teeth to tear at each other. It was filled with a primitive feeling, but upon closer inspection, he felt that their movements seemed to contain countless truths, making it difficult for him to extricate himself from them. The skills that the system had given Lin Yuan were actually of this style. Apart from the origin powers of water and ice, most of the techniques allowed Lin Yuan to borrow the strength of his body to fight. Lin Yuan had more than once believed that these were merely crude and superficial techniques, and that true cultivators and monsters should be able to summon the wind and summon the rain, using various techniques to fight. But in reality, was this really the case? As mentioned before, the spiritual energy between heaven and earth would suddenly be produced on its own, but it was extremely limited. Every cultivator or monster that swallowed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to cultivate would greatly consume the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Once a cultivator died, the spiritual energy would not return to heaven and earth, but would dissipate along with it. Therefore, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth became less and less, the inheritances of cultivators were cut off, the monsters continued to degenerate and rare treasures no longer appeared. This became a period of Dharma decline recorded in the history of cultivation. Perhaps there were other reasons, but Lin Yuan's previous life was truly a period of Dharma decline. Most of the cultivators were liars. Even if there were true cultivators, they could only cultivate to the level of ancient cultivators. There was no solution to this situation. Only during the period of Dharma decline, when the spiritual energy produced by heaven and earth was restored to a certain extent, would monsters and cultivators naturally be born and enter the next cultivation era's reincarnation. Those powerful people would either leave a world of Dharma decline, or turn into dust during this period of Dharma decline. At this time, no matter if it was a human or a beast, the method of self-protection was to fight with their bodies. This was the inheritance engraved in their blood. How could a self-preservation method engraved in his bloodline be weak? Chapter 851. The two mighty figures of the dragon clan clashed and tore at each other, while Lin Yuan, under the protection of the 3 reverse scales of the true dragon, entered a mysterious state. Tai Yang, who was following beside Lin Yuan, saw that Lin Yuan's eyes were absent-minded. He subconsciously opened his mouth to shout, but soon noticed that Lin Yuan's eyes were still flashing with a bright light. He did not look like he was shocked, but more like he had an epiphany recorded in some ancient literature. The battle between the ancestral Gragon and the Dragon Clan youth lasted about 10 minutes. Both sides were really angry and naturally did not consider holding back. In the end, the ancestral Gragon tore off the head of the Dragon Clan youth and declared victory. However, the ancestral Gragon was not in a good state either. When Lin Yuan came to, he saw that 3 of the ancestral Gragon's 4 dragon claws were broken, and his dragon whiskers were of different lengths. The upper half of his body had been bitten off by the Dragon Clan youth, while the lower half of his body had been forcefully crushed. His dragon head was also uneven, and one of his horns was broken. If Lin Yuan had suffered such terrible injuries, Lin Yuan would not have had the slightest chance of survival. However, for the ancestral Gragon, it was only a slight injury to his origin that could not be forcibly healed in a short period of time. He would need some time to recuperate. The heavily injured ancestral Gragon turned his head to look at Lin Yuan, but did not say a word. He just opened his mouth and inhaled, swallowing the 3 reverse scales into his stomach. Then he turned into a golden rainbow and escaped into the Willow Stone Fortress, seemingly intending to go into seclusion to recuperate. At this point there was really nothing much to say. It was not difficult for these great demons who had lived for countless years to figure out Lin Yuan's character. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had already done everything they could. If Lin Yuan was willing to remember this kindness, he did not need to say anything else, and he would be rewarded in the future. If Lin Yuan was not willing to remember this kindness, then it would be useless no matter how much he said. Ding. Congratulations to the host for comprehending the Destiny Divine ability, Roving Dragon's 9 transformations, by observing the battle between 2 ancestral demon realm dragons. A system message slowly appeared. Previously, there was no notification because it was worried that it would disturb Lin Yuan's epiphany. Now that it had confirmed that Lin Yuan was completely awake, the system unhurriedly announced the harvest of Lin Yuan's epiphany. Name, Roaming Dragon 9 Transformations Category. Natural Magical Power Description. Observing the dragon tribe's experts fighting, the blood in your body is slightly agitated, awakening a special ability that belongs to you. This special ability can only be used by the host and cannot be passed on to other living beings. However, it will be engraved in your bloodline. The host's descendants have a certain probability of tracing their bloodline and naturally inheriting this special ability. The introduction given by the system was very simple, but after Lin Yuan practiced the Roving Dragon's 9 transformations in his mind, an undetectable hint of joy flashed across his eyes. This Destiny Divine ability was not simple. From the level of the cultivation method, if one did not want to walk on the path of the gods as long as one had enough talent, cultivating this cultivation method could at least reach the celestial realm. Although one could not achieve immortality, one would still have a lifespan of close to 10,000 years, which was longer than the transcending realm and ancestral demon realm in the Jianghu world. One's combat strength would also be stronger. If one could survive the lightning tribulation, becoming an immortal with the same lifespan as the sun and moon would not be a problem. In a sense, the cultivation of this Destiny Divine ability was closer to the path of cultivation that Lin Yuan knew. However, those who could reach the highest level were usually those who walked on the path of the gods. The so-called Immortal Tao was a scam from the beginning to the end. Since the ancient calamities, the path of cultivation had become purely about cultivating qi to the Mahayana realm and then surviving the lightning tribulation to ascend. These immortals who had ascended could occupy a place in the so-called heavenly court and underworld, but everyone was well aware that the ones who had the final say in these places were actually those who walked on the path of the gods. Immortals were very strong. In many cases they were even stronger than the gods. However, the most fatal thing was that immortals had their limits. After transcending the lightning tribulation to ascend, immortals had to continue to transcend the lightning tribulation if they wanted to increase their strength. Each tribulation was a qualitative leap, but if they were not careful they would die under the lightning tribulation. To reach the level of the Tao ancestor, one had to transcend at least 12 tribulations. However, almost no one could transcend 12 tribulations. Even at that level, in front of an untainted land overlord like Hongjun, they were still as weak as ants unless they could transcend the legendary 13th tribulation. However, no one in the entire untainted land had ever seen the 13th tribulation. Whether the 13th tribulation existed or not, no one in the entire untainted land had ever seen it. It was only regarded as a legend. At the end of the Immortal Tao, one would only be at the level of Sanqing. They would never be a threat to Hongjun. Therefore, this cultivation system, which had been castrated by God knows how many times, slowly spread. However, in comparison, the divine Tao was much more dangerous. A powerful god meant that they had to manage a powerful divine kingdom. They had to be able to suppress the tyrannical gods in their own divine systems. They also had to face challenges from other divine systems' god kings. They also had to manage their faith and ensure that their believers would not switch to the embrace of other gods. They also had to ensure that their believers would not perish. Everything required a lot of time and energy. The slightest carelessness could lead to the destruction of one's soul. Compared to the Immortal Tao, which most of the time only required one to cultivate in silence, it was countless times more difficult. Although this set of life source magical abilities could only be inherited from the bloodline, the Roaming Dragon's 9 transformations was not a simple cultivation method. It included a series of methods to temper or use the corporeal body. For example, circulating one's qi and blood, fist techniques, lightness techniques, absorbing the essence of various spiritual objects to temper the corporeal body, and so on. As long as Lin Yuan could find some alchemy, artifact refining, array Dao and so on, he could almost deduce a complete cultivation system. Lin Yuan, who originally suffered from not being able to pass on the scripture of all living beings, did not have to worry about not being able to explain it to the Red Dust Taoist, because the immortal Dao method was not inferior to the soul sculpting secret art. From a personal point of view, Lin Yuan could completely say that he had gained a lot from this trip. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. But the question was the scheme of the old rulers really so simple? It was not that Lin Yuan was overthinking it, but according to the system's introduction, the old rulers were the heroes and wise men of their time. They were existences that could break free from the river of time. There was no easy way to find a good person. The other party could provoke the heart's demons to block the detection function attached to the battle of ideas, which seemed to give the Dragon Clan youth a great chance to kill him. This was indeed a good point. But everything had to be calculated before victory. This was the basic quality of a wise man. Could it be that the old rulers did not calculate that the other powerhouses in the Willowstone Fortress would not sit idly by? As long as he had the means to hold on until reinforcements arrived, he would be able to obtain a chance of survival? If they did not calculate to this point, then it meant that the so-called wise men among them were nothing more than this. If they calculated, then what was the deeper meaning behind this move? What would they do next? Chapter 852. At the same time. In the area where the Great Old Ones were located, countless waves of mind-numbing spiritual energy intertwined. Even if one were to sink in just a little bit, one would be twisted into a deformed being. Such a terrifying twisting power naturally did not come from just one Great Old One. All the existences that had struggled out of the river of time were gathered in this small area, working together to resist the impact of Lin Yuan's new era ideology. A huge purple monster that looked like an eyeball laughed and mocked, "Ancient E, even your plan fails sometimes. That little black Jiao didn't die in your scheme. Regarding this matter, shouldn't you give us a proper explanation? For your plan, I spent so much effort to provoke that kid's inner demon. Qi Ming even sent out the dragon that we tamed with great difficulty to attract the firepower, but in the end, Kiki. The one called Ancient E was a creature that barely maintained a humanoid form. It was 8 meters tall and wore a gray robe. A jade pendant that emitted a green luster hung on its waist. However, its facial features were distorted, making it impossible to see its expression. Instead of hair growing on its head, it was a poisonous snake that kept twisting its body. Ancient E turned his head and glanced at the purple eyeball. He glared at it and said, "If you didn't act rashly, how could you push the Black Jiao to the opposite side of us? If you didn't do that when we distorted the entire Endless Sea and controlled countless sea monsters to attack the Jianghu continent, everything would be under our control. We wouldn't be like now, blocked by a group of sea monsters, unable to move an inch. We're in such a precarious situation. If you really want me to give you an explanation, why don't you give us an explanation first?" The purple eyeball cackled a few more times, but it didn't say anything. It looked away with a guilty conscience. "Besides, who told you that my plan failed?" Ancient E waved his sleeves and sat on his seat with a cold face. He sneered and said, "I don't know what that Black Jiao is thinking. He purposely threw out a battle of ideals to provoke us. He wants to force us to march into the Endless Sea and fight to the death with the sea monsters. However, in the end he's just a beast. How could he know that he's not the only one who wants to fight?" Ancient Yi's eyes flashed with a faint chill. Now that things had developed to this point, regardless of whether it was the sea monsters or the Great Old Ones, they were at a standstill. Whether it was strength or numbers, the sea monsters had the absolute upper hand. However, they were unable to eliminate the Great Old Ones. This was because the Great Old Ones had a more terrifying distorting power than the normal aberrations. They were the peak existences of the old era. Once their numbers reached a certain point, the quantitative change would cause a qualitative change. Even if Lin Yuan continued to suppress them with the battle of ideals, the actual effect would not be great. Even if the monsters of the Endless Sea could suppress the aberrations they had transformed into, as the battle progressed, these Great Old Ones, who were far more terrifying than the aberrations, could distort the vanguard troops of the Endless Sea into aberrations in the blink of an eye, which was equivalent to establishing an invincible position. However, the sea monsters of the Endless Sea had multiplied for so many years. How could they not have any trump cards? Whoever had the upper hand would definitely be at a disadvantage. Just like the aberration ancestral dragon from before, it was almost captured when the Great Old Ones appeared. In the end, it was only recently completely transformed into an aberration. Those tyrannical sea monsters could also resist the distorting power with their own willpower. Although the result would not change with Lin Yuan as a variable, the longer they delayed, the easier it would be for accidents to happen. As you all know, we are indeed very strong. However, compared to the united demonic beasts of the Endless Sea, we are ridiculously weak. Once the Black Flood Dragon discovers our weakness, or completely suppresses us through a battle of ideologies, it will only be a matter of time before we are sealed back into the river of time. If it wasn't for that idiot Ji Sui, it wouldn't be so difficult for us to occupy the Endless Sea. However, things have already reached this stage. There is no point in continuing to complain and fight among ourselves. Ancient Yi clenched his right fist and said in a deep voice, "Fortunately, we still have a chance of survival. Now that the Endless Sea has serious internal conflicts, we should take advantage of this time to design their high-end combat power one by one and reduce the number of opponents we have to face when the final battle breaks out. This is a big strategy. I need all of you to fully cooperate with me. If anyone doesn't cooperate, I don't mind personally tearing them apart." At the same time, Lin Yuan, who was under the Willowstone Fortress, slowly raised his head and muttered, "So this is their plan? They are indeed the top existences of their generation. With such great courage, I might not dare to make such a bet." He had thought it through. The great old ones seemed to have the upper hand in the war with the sea monsters of the Endless Sea, and it was only a matter of time before they devoured the Endless Sea. However, in reality they were just pushing ducks onto a perch. They could have easily devoured the entire Endless Sea and would not even have caused the Heavenly Gate Guards to be on guard against them. Perhaps they could really destroy the current world and strangle the new era in its cradle. Originally, the aberrations had the upper hand in the war. Otherwise, the sea monsters of the Endless Sea would not have been forced to retreat. However, the great old ones should not be able to advance any further in a short period of time. Otherwise, the sea monsters of the Endless Sea would not have been able to defend the Willowstone Fortress. Especially now that there was a variable like him, the great old ones were afraid. They already knew that it was Lin Yuan who had started the new era. Regardless of whether they admitted it or not, they definitely treated Lin Yuan as an opponent on the same level as them. Thus, they could not help but guess that Lin Yuan was discovering their weakness. In this situation, it was obviously impossible for them to continue developing in silence. In particular, the assassination that they had planned today did not succeed. It would be even more difficult for them to do it again. In a situation where they could not kill Lin Yuan, they could only choose to speed up their pace and find an opportunity to fight to determine the victor. Including the dragon race youth and the seriously injured ancestral Gragon, how many ancestral demon ancestors have died on the side of the Endless Sea? If the great old ones continue to nibble away at this speed, when the final battle comes, will there still be anyone who can fight on the side of the Endless Sea? Lin Yuan's strange eyes trembled slightly, and a feeling of palpitations arose spontaneously. If he did not feel that something was wrong, he would not have thought of this and had the same thoughts as he watched the sea monsters fight among themselves. Chapter 853. The outcome of the battle at the front had also been revealed. The mutated ancestral dragon was indeed powerful. It was originally standing at the peak of the ancestral demon realm. After the mutation, its physical strength became even more powerful. However, a tiger couldn't defeat a pack of wolves and was still torn into pieces by the ancestral demon of the Endless Sea. On the side of the Endless Sea, 3 ancestral demon realm monsters paid the price. Senior. Lin Yuan's figure flashed and stopped a relatively powerful ancestral demon. He said in a deep voice, "I figured out something. I need to gather all the ancestral demon realm seniors for a meeting. Please help me inform the seniors." As soon as his voice fell, Lin Yuan's dragon tail rolled and handed a black cloth bag to the other party. The black cloth bag was a product of the Northern Frontiers Ministry of Works. It was similar to a sumeru ring, but the storage space was not that large. It was only about 10 cubic meters. This was the product of the Northern Frontiers Ministry of Works' countless master-level craftsmen, the precious materials produced by the Hengduan Mountains and the 7 dynasties, and the wonderful ideas in Lin Yuan's mind. Although it was far from Lin Yuan's initial idea, this black cloth bag was still an extremely rare treasure. No matter which world it was, time and space were always the highest level of power. Situations where storage-type artifacts were everywhere would never happen in the real world. According to the current production capacity of the Northern Frontier, at most 3 black cloth bags of this size were produced in a year. Each of them was an existence that could make transcendent realm cultivators fight for. The black cloth bag also contained a lot of spiritual items. Whether it was the effect or the age, they were all the best. This was something prepared after the launch of the Trade City plan. There were only 3 of them in total. They were originally intended to be given to some heavyweight great demons as a meeting gift to see if they could be pulled onto their chariot. He didn't expect it to be used here. When the demon ancestor saw Lin Yuan hand over a black cloth bag, he was slightly stunned at first, but he still accepted it. After scanning it with his mind, an uncontrollable joy appeared on his face as he said, "Dragon King, you are too polite. You are a distinguished guest of the Endless Sea. If you need anything, just say the word. Why are you being so polite?" That being said, the demon ancestor had no intention of returning the black pouch to Lin Yuan. In other words, it was fine to return those fays to Lin Yuan, but this black pouch was too fragrant. A storage-type artifact. This was something that not even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had. As he watched the other party leave, the smile in Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly disappeared, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Honored guests of the Endless Sea? The meaning behind his words was very clear. Since he was a guest, he would have to leave sooner or later. He didn't welcome Lin Yuan to be involved in the power struggle of the Endless Sea, and it didn't matter what Lin Yuan left in the Endless Sea. Once he lost his value, he would definitely be chased out. Whether it was the gray-scaled flood dragon person or the Trade City, they would all be divided up by the various sea demon clans. If it wasn't for his good temperament and the fact that his flood dragon face couldn't make many expressions, he would have almost lost his composure just now. Whether it was the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas or the other sea demon clans, they were all greedy in nature. An hour later, all the demon ancestors of the Endless Sea were gathered in the Willow Stone Fortress. Of course, compared to the recorded numbers, there were definitely fewer demon ancestors here. After all, many demon ancestors had been corrupted and deformed by the Great Old Ones. Although they hadn't completely degenerated into deformities, under the reflection of Lin Yuan's battle of ideals, they still had nowhere to hide. The demon ancestors who had been mixed in with the guards had already proved this point. They didn't want to give themselves away in front of Lin Yuan and be captured and killed. However, these missing demon ancestors had already been recorded by those who wanted to. Whether they appeared on the battlefield in the future or after the Great Old Ones were eliminated, they definitely wouldn't gain any benefits. After all, intelligent creatures had the same characteristic, which was that they hated traitors. They could kill each other and scheme against each other, but they still kept the last layer of cover. No matter what methods they used, they definitely had to make sure that under the circumstances of weakening the other clans, the ones who had the last laugh would still be the demon beasts of the Endless Sea. Lin Yuan slowly came to the huge conference room. He first recited the 24-word mantra. After confirming that there were no deformities present, he cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, "Whether it is cultivation or age, all of you far surpass me. However, regarding deformities, all of you seniors' understanding might not be as good as mine. Today's battle has indirectly confirmed some of my previous views. This is a serious matter, so I had no choice but to ask all of you seniors to take the time out of your busy schedules to come here. I'm truly terrified." The group of demon ancestors didn't speak. They just stared at Lin Yuan in a daze as if they wanted to know what Lin Yuan was planning. They didn't deny that Lin Yuan understood the Great Old Ones better than they did, but they would never admit this. Lin Yuan could see through the Great Old Ones' movements, but they couldn't. Didn't this make them look like idiots? Even the youngest person in the room has been eating for hundreds of years more than Lin Yuan. Who can afford to lose face like this? The leader of the deformities should be looking for an opportunity to start a decisive battle with us. However, all of you seniors, under your strict defense, they didn't see any opportunity. Lin Yuan's words made the old faces of all the demon ancestors present turn red. Strict defense? Wasn't it strict defense? They didn't think of starting a war with the deformities at all. If the deformities hadn't approached the Willowstone region, they might not even have opened up a battlefield. However, although all of you seniors didn't take the initiative to attack and left the deformities a chance to survive, the deformities didn't seem to understand all of your good intentions. During this period of time, they have been looking for an opportunity. Now, they are even taking the initiative to create an opportunity to gradually weaken our high-end combat power. When the time is right, they will attack with all their might and break through the Willowstone region's last line of defense. Lin Yuan curled up his body. The demon ancestors immediately looked over with scrutinizing gazes. After all, this wasn't a small matter. The slightest carelessness could lead to a complete loss. Even Lin Yuan couldn't make irresponsible remarks. Black Jiao, do you have any evidence for your words? A demon ancestor's eyes turned cold as he asked in a deep voice. No. Lin Yuan shook his head honestly. There was no joy or sorrow in his eyes. Without waiting for the demon ancestor to ask further, he said, "What I said is just speculation based on observation. What the deformities are going to do next is..." Chapter 854. Sow discord among the strong monsters in the Endless Sea. Don't just focus on the ancestral monster and monster king monsters. Even if they are cannon fodder, as long as there is a chance to sow discord, don't let it go. Leave this matter to Ziyi. In addition, try to tame those ancestral demons and demon kings that Qi Ming is holding captive as soon as possible. If they are too stubborn, think of a way to break through their psychological defenses and force them to confess some of their past grievances. See if we can find an opportunity to stir up the resentment that has been accumulating between the sea demons for a long time. If they are willing to cooperate, we can let them go. If they are unwilling, we can deal with them directly. Pay more attention to Wild Bone's side. Continue to send cannon fodder level aberrations to interfere with the monsters in the Endless Sea. Press them step by step, but don't let them be driven into a corner and directly send out troops to fight us to the death. If we fight a decisive battle now, our chances of winning are not high. Ancient Barbarian looked at the gathered Great Old Ones and said in a deep voice, "That's all I have to say for now. If I think of something later and want to change the plan, I will inform you." The position of the Great Old Ones was in a very awkward position. Perhaps there would be some ambitious people who would cooperate with them, but the two sides were destined to be unable to coexist. In the end, it was inevitable that they would meet with swords and spears. Therefore, from the beginning of this war there was no peace talk. One side was destined to be completely destroyed. If it wasn't for the fact that the internal strife among the monsters in the Endless Sea was too great, if they joined forces with the Black Jiao, the current Great Old Ones wouldn't be able to resist, but their chances of winning would definitely be less than 30%. There was only one chance. Although the series of tricks were sneaky, it was an open and above-board scheme. Ancient Barbarian could guess that the Black Jiao would think of this, but even so he didn't care at all. After all, the Black Flood Dragon was an outsider. He didn't know about the filthy relations between the various demon clans in the Endless Sea. Aside from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, which had always been their public enemy, the other sea demon clans also had a lot of blood debts between them. Moreover, it was a hatred that had accumulated over countless years. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so disloyal in the face of a great enemy. If the Black Flood Dragon had the prestige to intimidate the entire Endless Sea and make all the Endless Sea monsters obediently listen to him, not giving them the slightest chance of winning, then Gui could only say that he had done his best and that his loss in the end was justified. However, did the Black Jiao really have such prestige? Obviously not. It was just an outsider. To the big clans in the Endless Sea, it was just a passerby. Unless it left the Hengduan Mountains and joined the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas, the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas would not stand on its side. While Ancient Barbarian was issuing orders, Lin Yuan was also speaking frankly in a meeting attended by most of the monster ancestors of the Endless Sea. However, he keenly sensed that when he recited the Great Old One's plan, most of the ancestral monster ancestors' expressions became unnatural. Did Lin Yuan make sense? Yes. The Great Old One's threats and curses? Yes. However, it was obviously impossible for them to let go of their prejudices and hatred. Even for humans who were far more civilized than the demonic beasts, once they accumulated such a level of hatred, the two parties would not rest until one of them was dead. There were even some extremists who, even if they couldn't survive, would drag the other side down with them. Not to mention the barbaric monsters. For a moment, the entire meeting hall was silent. After a while, a monster ancestor sitting in the front row slowly narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "I agree with Black Water Dragon King's point of view. This time, the Endless Sea is facing a catastrophe. If we're not careful, the entire Endless Sea will be destroyed. That's not all. After the Endless Sea is destroyed, the entire world will face the impact of the aberrations. I can't bear this sin." The monsters present were all at the peak of this world. In other words, all of them had the potential to become gods. For an incomplete world, to complete the 3 realms and 6 paths, various god systems must emerge. Through these gods, they must establish their divine kingdoms and evolve the 3 realms and 6 paths. Only then could it evolve into a complete world. Therefore, even if the monster ancestors present hadn't seen it with their own eyes, They knew about the existence of the world will and rule power. If they could stop a catastrophe, they would be bestowed with merits by the world will. It wouldn't be a problem for them to become gods on the spot. Even if they couldn't, they would be a big step ahead of those who only knew how to cultivate and accumulate god power. Immortality would be close at hand. But the reverse was also true. This catastrophe had already arrived in front of them. It was impossible for them to ignore it. If they couldn't stop it or even help the evildoers, not only would they not receive any merits, they would also be burdened with sins. Those who had accumulated a large amount of god power might be able to withstand it, but ordinary monster ancestors would have to face the heavenly tribulation on the spot. It would be considered good if they died on the spot. They were afraid that their souls would scatter and their bodies would vanish. They wouldn't even have the chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation. This common sense couldn't be hidden because this was the scope of the world will's authority. As long as their cultivation reached a certain level, they would naturally receive a hint. Although the ancient creatures that fled here had passed down countless cultivation methods and cultivated cultivators to guard the gate of heaven, just by looking at the god-sculpting sect in the past, it was clear that those ancient creatures were hiding something. Their cultivation had reached the ancestor monster realm and supremacy realm, but in fact they had already reached the peak. If they wanted to take a step further and become a god, they had no way to do so. They could only feel the stones and cross the river, feeling their way bit by bit. So far, not a single one of them had succeeded. Otherwise, the white-robed man's avatar wouldn't have been able to slaughter so many ancestor monster realm cultivators, leaving them without any strength to fight back. This was not only directed at the god-sculpting sect, but also at the cultivation sects of ancient times. It should be the doing of the ancient creatures. They didn't want this world to become complete, because a complete world could accept the arrival of a sage. Only an incomplete world could accommodate them, and they didn't need to worry about Hongjun and his sages personally coming to kill them. While the group of ancestor monster realm experts were having a fierce psychological struggle, Lin Yuan's mind had already flown to the sky, and he began to think about his own matters. This scene was within his expectations. He had only called this meeting because he had seen through the schemes of the old rulers. However, none of the monster beasts of the endless sea treated him as one of their own. With his prestige and strength, it was impossible for these monster beasts to restrain their own clansmen and let go of their prejudices. They needed to think, discuss, and consider how to deal with this matter themselves. Chapter 855. The demon court should still exist. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the 4 dragon gods of the Dragon God Temple. His eyes flickered with light. Although he did not know why the ancient demon court had been buried in the long river of time, he was certain that the ancient demon court definitely existed in a corner of this world. The strength of the ancestral dragons was indeed tyrannical, but in the era of the demon court, they were only peripheral members. After the Dragon Han tribulation, the most powerful dragon race among the 3 races had no choice but to give up the land and retreat to the 4 seas. How strong could the remaining members be? In his previous life, during the Tang dynasty, Wei Zheng had only slain the dragon in his dream for a moment. The dragon palace of the 4 seas had declined to such a state. They definitely did not have the capital to contend with the other races of the primordial world. Therefore, if there was really a calamity, there was an 80% chance that these ancestral dragons would be used as cannon fodder by the demon court. If the demon court was destroyed, it could only mean that the loser was actually the demon court. Then these cannon fodder definitely had no chance of survival. Why would they stay in the endless sea and re-establish the dragon race of the 4 seas? Therefore, the demon court had most likely disbanded on its own. It was hard to say how strong the demon court was back then, but it was definitely enough to make the current guardian of the heavenly gate feel despair. To put it bluntly, these primordial creatures had hidden a trick when they passed down the techniques, but they would not be affected. Even these rising stars could climb to the peak of the world. How strong were those ancient primordial creatures? The primordial world, zenith heavens were everywhere, and Tai was inferior to dogs. Why didn't the members of the demon court become gods in this world? Were they afraid of mending the world, or did they not want to be bound by this world and wanted to counterattack the primordial world one day? The sky demon, the 6 empires, the guardian of the heavenly gate, the demon beasts of the endless sea, the old rulers, the demon beasts of the Hengduan mountains. Lin Yuan had never been afraid of these opponents that he could see with the naked eye. After all, he could see and touch them. They could compete with their methods. However, the demon court, which was as strong as it was back then, had not perished. Instead, it had gone from the light to the dark and had been lurking in this world. God knew how many of the major events that were recorded in history were fueled by the members of the demon court. What was even more fatal was that Lin Yuan did not know the attitude of the demon court. It could be said that everyone knew that he was using the tiger skin of the demon court. However, he could not deceive himself and the real demon court. He had spent this period of time peacefully. No member of the demon court stood out to expose him, nor did any member of the demon court contact him in private. No, that's not right. They came into contact with me. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed and a name appeared in his mind, Kong Lezhen. A supreme cultivator who seemed to be a guardian of the heavenly gates had a completely different attitude from the other guardians of the heavenly gates. Even when Lin Yuan wanted to kick a Dao integration cultivator off the dining table this time, most of the guardians of the heavenly gates harbored malice towards him. However, Kong Lezhen brazenly made a move and wiped out those who were hiding in the dark and wanted to kill Guan Zhaoshan. This was simply going against the entire heavenly gates guardian. It would be fine if he was in the transcendent realm. But he was only a supreme being. His confidence came from the demon court. There was also the incubus. The beast lord Kirin who ruled the Hengduan mountain range was most likely a member of the demon court. The cultivation of the desolate demon realm could conceal the secrets of the heavens and help Lin Yuan to block the system's ability to directly detect his inner thoughts. Such a method was not something a mere desolate demon realm could come up with. So what if the bloodline was noble? Back then, when the Kirin clan was powerful, wasn't it still suppressed by Hongjun, Tiandao and other big shots? After sorting out his thoughts, Lin Yuan let out a long breath of turbid air, and his face looked much better. At least at this stage, the members of the demon court were still kind to him. Black Water Dragon King. A call awakened Lin Yuan from his thoughts. When he raised his head, his gaze fell on the demon ancestor who was the first to respond to him. He heard the demon ancestor say, "The demon beasts of the Endless Sea are different from the demon beasts of the Hengduan mountain range. We have always been the ones to attack humans. Even the Supreme Being and Transcendent Realm cultivators would never dare to enter the Endless Sea to look for trouble with us. Therefore, the major clans are indeed not as united as the clans of the Hengduan mountain range. There are too many blood feuds between each other. It is absolutely impossible for us to completely let go of it." Seeing the other party's hesitant look, Lin Yuan just raised his eyelids and did not refute. He was too lazy to persuade him. "We have already discussed it. However, we've already discussed this. Before the end of this war, no one is allowed to play any tricks. We must let go of our hatred and sever all cooperation with the aberrations. After the war is over, whoever seeks revenge is their own business. Before that, if anyone tries to cause trouble, we won't engage in meaningless internal strife. Those who start trouble will be expelled from the protection of Willowstone Fortress. However, we still have to advance and retreat together. When the final battle comes, we must send troops to assist. In addition, we have to trouble Black Water Dragon King to use that mysterious language to find all the aberrations hidden in the Willowstone Fortress to ensure that we will not be schemed against by the aberrations." The expression on the demon ancestor's face was very serious, and his tone was very sincere. However, Lin Yuan gently shook his head and said in a low voice, "No, even if we find all the aberrations, it will not be safe. Today, a member of the Dragon God Temple attacked me. Because of the previous tests, I can be sure that he is not an aberration. Furthermore, before the meeting, I had already confirmed with a senior from the dragon race that he had not come into contact with any aberrations. In fact, he had not even come into contact with the beasts on the front lines. Thus, for the time being, I believe that there is an expert on the side of the aberrations who can turn into something invisible to the naked eye and provoke our inner demons." Before he finished speaking, Lin Yuan's expression suddenly changed. Turning into something invisible and formless, provoking the inner demons of living beings, and turning them into a puppet of their desires? Wasn't this the method of the sky demon? After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Lin Yuan continued, "Thus, I suspect that the aberrations are not only facing us alone. They may have already contacted the sky demon from outside the heaven's gate through a method that we do not understand and received some help. If this is all they do, it may not be effective." As he finished speaking, the cooling sauce was almost sucked dry. The sky demon had existed since ancient times, and it had always been a great calamity that the cultivators and beasts of the Jianghu world could not avoid. One aberration was enough to give them a headache. If the sky demon was added, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking about the worst, if these two calamities were not dealt with properly, they could directly overturn the Jianghu world and fall on the endless sea at the same time. The atmosphere suddenly became oppressive. Chapter 856. Fortunately, the Sky Demon doesn't even care about the southern territories of the Jianghu dynasty. He's focused on fighting the northern frontier, so it's impossible for him to send a large number of people to the endless sea to help the aberrations. Even if the Sky Demon really exists, it should only be a part of it or maybe one or two of them. They won't be able to influence the entire battle. Although Lin Yuan was also uneasy, he knew that blindly speaking ill of the situation would only make the situation more complicated. He said in a low voice, "However, the appearance of the Sky Demon here isn't completely a bad thing for us. After all, dealing with this kind of thing has always been the Heavenly Gate Protector's specialty. What I mean is to ask the Heavenly Gate Protector to send a part of the practitioners into the Endless Sea to fight with us. Firstly, it's to reduce the threat of the Sky Demon. Secondly, with strong reinforcements, our chances of winning against the aberrations will be higher." As soon as he finished speaking, the entire place fell silent again. For a moment, all kinds of distracting thoughts rose in the hearts of the Endless Sea monsters. Ask the Heavenly Gate Protector to come and help? Of course they had no objections. But the problem was that this kind of thing wasn't up to them. The Heavenly Gate Protector's comprehensive strength was far above the monsters of the Endless Sea. If not for the terrain advantage of the Endless Sea monsters and the fact that they weren't pushovers, the humans would have no reason to let go of the Endless Sea, which occupied a larger area and had more abundant resources. However, the humans only occupied some of the surrounding islands of the Jianghu continent before stopping their expansion. Even most of the coastal areas along the rivers began to worship some aquatic monsters to pray for the safety of their ships. It couldn't be said that there was a blood feud between the two sides, but the difference between the races was there. The Heavenly Gate Protector couldn't wait for the monsters of the Endless Sea to be greatly injured or even unable to recover. How could they easily send people to help them? Even if they were willing, how could the deacons under them be willing? Looking at the practitioners of the entire Jianghu continent, if it wasn't for the fact that they were forced into a corner like the demon sect, who would be willing to enter the Endless Sea to make a living? Boom. Dong. Lin Yuan used the tip of his tail to knock on the stone platform in front of him, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He sneered and said, "Everyone, don't always look at things with a rigid mindset. Your concerns are indeed reasonable. No human practitioner is willing to enter the Endless Sea. Even the Heavenly Gate Guardian who said that he would protect the world has not appeared until now. It is obvious that he has an indifferent attitude. However, you seem to have forgotten why you are gathered here, right?" At this point, Lin Yuan smiled and continued, "That's because the aberrations are too terrifying. They've only been born for a short time, but they've already reached a stalemate with the entire Endless Sea. In that case you should look a bit further. If we lose and the aberrations take over the entire Endless Sea, they can use it as a springboard to join forces with the Sky Demon to attack the entire Martial Heaven continent. What will the Heavenly Gates Guardians use to resist?" A bright light flashed in the eyes of an ancestral dragon that Lin Yuan had never seen before. He said excitedly, "So now it's not about whether we need reinforcements or not. Instead, it's about whether the Heavenly Gates Guardians want to die with us or pinch their noses and send reinforcements to help us." "Yes, that's what I meant." Lin Yuan nodded slightly and confirmed the ancestral dragon's meaning. He changed the topic and said, "However, we still have to give them face. Humans are different from us. They pay attention to etiquette. Even if they're anxious, they can't rush over to help us. Thus, we still have to let the Dragon Palace take the lead and send a powerful demon king to the Martial Heaven continent to ask the Heavenly Gates Guardians to help us." The ancestral dragon's eyes flashed and he seemed to hesitate. Regardless of whether it was a human or a demon beast, they had to give benefits when they asked for help. The greater the help and the higher the status of the other party, the more benefits they would have to offer. Although the dragon race of the Four Seas was wealthy, they were still a large race. They could only barely provide for themselves. In particular, in recent years the other sea demon races had become increasingly disobedient to the rule of the dragon race of the Four Seas, and the resources they offered as tribute had decreased. He did not have the confidence to say that he could satisfy the appetites of the Heavenly Gates Guardians. "Senior, don't worry. We don't have to give them any benefits. We still have to make them do their best to help us." Lin Yuan said slowly, "You just have to choose someone with a wild and evil personality to send. You just have to give them face on the surface, but you don't have to give them any benefits in private. Just tell the Heavenly Gates guardians that the deformed creatures have joined forces with the Sky Demon. If they want to continue to stay in the Martial Heaven continent and watch the tigers fight, we'll go all the way. Everyone will give up resistance and die with them. The vicious were afraid of the rash, and the rash were afraid of those who did not care about their lives. This was a hooligan's train of thought brought about by the explosion of information in his previous life. Lin Yuan did not care about the attitude of the Heavenly Gates guardians at all. Those who were ambitious had already stepped out of the Heavenly Gate and headed to other worlds to pursue higher realms. The practitioners who remained in the Martial Heaven continent were not all mediocre, but they definitely made up the majority. He was now in the Endless Sea, and it was impossible for the Heavenly Gates guardians not to guess that this was his intention. Thus, the Heavenly Gates guardians did not dare to take the risk. Although Lin Yuan had relied on the system and his own calculations to develop to this day, in the eyes of outsiders, Lin Yuan had always been dancing on the tip of a knife. No one doubted that Lin Yuan would not do something like flipping the table at the slightest disagreement. Furthermore, lowering himself to ask the other party for help was obviously not on the same level as threatening to perish together with the other party to force the other party to help. After all, any intelligent creature had a deep-rooted bad habit. Before it involved their own interests, it was fine to put on an act. However, if it involved their own interests, it was enough to make an existence that usually acted like a sheep reveal its wolf nature. Of course, although this method was highly efficient, it was just not likable. However, in a world where the strong preyed on the weak, it was useless no matter how likable it was. Once you had something that made others jealous, they would want to kill you and take your treasures for themselves. If the Heavenly Gate guardians dared to do this, he would dare to do the same. In any case, he was not a saint who flaunted himself with benevolence, righteousness, and morality. Although he had borrowed the power of the system to cultivate, his true goal had never been to kill Hongjun or replace Hongjun. Instead, he wanted to return to his previous life and take revenge for the blood feud that had plagued him. Since no one was a good person, there was no need for them to deceive each other and laugh and chat. That was too much of a waste of time. It was better to directly flip the table and see who was faster. There was no need to play the sly fox of a mountain and talk about the tricks of a strange studio. Chapter 857. 3 days later. Tianwu continent, south of the Xinwu dynasty Yangji sect. Preposterous, preposterous. These beasts are too much of a bully. A white-haired old man had his hands behind his back as he paced back and forth in his room. His face was so red that it seemed like blood was about to drip out. As the sect leader of a first-rate force, he didn't dare to say that his cultivation was unparalleled, but he was at least a Dao integration realm cultivator. Furthermore, he had the support of the Heavenly Gate Protector, which was an incomparably huge alliance. When he met the higher-ups of other sects, he could do whatever he wanted. As long as he went out, he would try to curry favor with them. However, today was an exception. A demonic beast that was hiding from humans had come knocking on their door. It had even F***King blocked the mountain gate of the Yangji sect. In an instant, it had broken through the sword formation formed by 7 Heaven Dipper realm disciples and severely injured a Kongming realm elder who had rushed over after hearing the news. This action was undoubtedly a resounding slap to the Yangji sect's face in front of countless people. After all, this was such a big matter, and the other party didn't try to hide it. It was like a mass of dark clouds floating out from the endless sea. It didn't try to hide it at all, and it was difficult not to attract attention. Sun Xingzi had been in charge of the Yangji sect for 170 years, and the number of people he had lost face added up to today's humiliation. However, he couldn't kill that arrogant demonic beast because its background wasn't small. It was the eldest son of the current Dragon King of the East Seas, and its status was equivalent to that of a crown prince of a human empire. If it was a crown prince of a human empire, he could kill him with a raise of his hand. However, the dragon race of the Four Seas wasn't an existence that the Yangji sect could easily provoke. Not to mention anything else, the dragon race of the Four Seas could easily slaughter the entire Yangji sect. Today he killed a crown prince of the East Seas Dragon Palace. Tomorrow the Dragon King of the East Seas would dare to use the power of his entire race to slaughter the Yangji sect. Although the dragon race of the Four Seas had their own rules, that was only an internal punishment for the dragon race. It was just an explanation to the outside world, and at the same time, it was to restrain the younger generation of the dragon race from acting recklessly. However, the dragon clan was also extremely protective of their own people. If a human cultivator dared to touch a single dragon scale of the dragon clan, it would be an irreconcilable hatred. Of course, this was because the dragon bloodline demonic beasts were indeed full of treasures. If they did not appear to be protective of their brethren and fight to the death with the cultivators who dared to harm the dragon clan, it was hard to say how many vicious people would go out to the sea to hunt the dragon bloodline demonic beasts. This was a blow that a race with an extremely low reproductive ability could not bear. It was precisely because of these rules that even if a dragon bloodline Yao beast were to cause trouble, as long as it had the backing of the dragon clan of the Four Seas, the cultivators would only dare to capture it and inform the dragon clan of the Four Seas to come and take it away. After that, they would just demand an explanation from the dragon clan of the Four Seas. Father, there must be something fishy about this. A middle-aged man in luxurious purple robes pushed open the door to Sun Xingzi's room and said with a grave expression, "I've looked through the records of the sect in recent years and sent a message to a disciple on a mission. After confirming it several times, I've confirmed that our Jianghu sect hasn't done anything to offend the dragon clan of the Four Seas in the past 10 years. They've come knocking on our door, so I'm afraid they've come with ill intentions." Sun Xingzi's eyes flashed and then he frowned slightly. His expression was somewhat ugly. It shouldn't be what he was thinking, right? The dragon clan of the Four Seas had their own rules. Even if he lost face today, it would be a matter of being laughed at. However, after the eldest son of the East Sea Dragon King returned to the Endless Sea, even if his cultivation wasn't destroyed, he would still be suppressed in the evil dragon pool for more than 300 years. If the East Sea Dragon Palace had come to seek revenge, it could be explained. However, the Jianghu sect hadn't offended the dragon clan of the Four Seas in the past 10 years. How could they seek revenge? In addition, the change in the Endless Sea wasn't a secret among the Heavenly Gate Guardians. Recently, many Heavenly Gate Guardians had been running around to discuss countermeasures. They were studying how to deal with the dragon clan of the Four Seas if they couldn't withstand the attacks of the aberrations. The answer was no solution. Once the entire Endless Sea fell, the aberrations would no longer have a geographical advantage when they came ashore. However, the strange distorting power was still in existence that made all the practitioners' hair stand on end. Thus, if things really fell to that stage, their destruction was only a matter of time. However, if the Black Jiao was in the Endless Sea. In short, after much discussion, they finally came to a conclusion. The demonic beasts of the Endless Sea would soon come ashore and ask for help. However, the problem was that even though they had requested for help, according to the Black Flood Dragon's temperament and natural disposition, it was impossible for it to allow the Heavenly Gates Guardians to reap the benefits. This was probably a strenuous and unrewarding task. Under these circumstances, anyone who raised this matter at the Heavenly Gates Guardians Alliance meeting would pass. However, there was no doubt that this was an extremely offensive matter. F***ck, Sun Xingzi thought. After hesitating for a long time, Sun Xingzi waved his hand in annoyance and said in a low voice, "I won't see you. If you lose face, so be it. Go to the mountain gate and inform the disciples guarding the mountain to activate the mountain sealing array. Since we have already lost face, we might as well completely lose face. As long as the demonic beasts don't leave, we will seal the mountain and not see any outsiders." This? The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. It was obvious that he did not expect his father to have such an attitude. Although the art of formations was unorthodox, no one dared to deny the power of formations. However, the biggest problem was that it burned money. Not everyone was as generous as the person who had set up the array at the Cloud Crane Temple. He had connected the spirit vein of Mount Cloud Crane to the array and could open and close it at any time. Once the other factions activated the mountain sealing array, they were basically facing the disaster of being exterminated. Every breath would burn a large number of spirit stones. With the foundation of the Jianghu sect, it was not that they could not afford it, but once the array was activated, it would burn at least half of the sect's spirit stone savings. That demonic beast was actually so powerful? The middle-aged man, who did not know the other party's intentions, could not help but be shocked. After the middle-aged man closed the door, bowed, and left, a cold smile appeared on Sun Xingzi's face. Only an idiot would help you with this task. Black Jiao, slowly try your luck and see when you can meet that idiot. At the same time, outside the Jianghu sect's mountain gate, when the eldest son of the Eastern Sea Dragon King saw that the Jianghu sect had activated the mountain sealing array, he could not help but sneer. He waved his right hand lightly and ordered some sea demons behind him. He said in a low voice, The Black Water Dragon King had already expected this. This group of humans is indeed treacherous. They would rather lose face than speak up for us. Fine, let's see who can outlast the other. Come set up camp. This young master will fight to the death here. After a while, the mountain ceiling array was activated. Not only did the demonic beast not retreat, but it also set up camp outside the mountain gate to rest. This news reached Sun Xingzi's ears. Chapter 858. Motherf asterisk Ker? Sun Xingzi roared furiously. He put on a face as if he was on the verge of exploding. What the hell is wrong with that demonic beast? Is it really that shameless? Motherf asterisk Ker, why? I've already admitted defeat. You hurt my disciples and blocked my mountain gate, but I didn't hold it against you. Instead, I admitted defeat and activated the Great Mountain Ceiling Array. In that case, don't look for me for such a difficult task. Would you die if you changed to another sect? How long could the mountain ceiling formation last? 8 to 10 years was definitely not a problem, but if he missed the task he would not be able to bear the responsibility. The other sects that knew the inside story would probably only be happy on the side. They would not bring trouble to him. Then wouldn't he be crazy to burn money to make himself the scapegoat? Sun Xingzi took a few deep breaths as his chest heaved up and down. He waved his hand with an ugly expression and sighed. I still can't avoid a disaster that has come knocking on my door. Whatever, I'll go out and see this guy. In less than 3 breaths of time, the Yangji sect's mountain ceiling formation closed again. Sun Xingzi did not lead the elders of the sect. Instead, he walked to the gate and smiled bitterly. Since you are determined to give this task to my Yangji sect, then I can only thank you for thinking highly of me. Once I pack up, I'll go with you. How about it? As a famous person in the southern cultivation world, Sun Xingzi was clearly not a kind person. Many cultivators were nearby. When the Yangji sect opened the mountain ceiling formation, they thought Sun Xingzi was not in the sect or in seclusion. That was why they allowed the demonic beast to do as it pleased. A moment later, the mountain ceiling formation was closed. When Sun Xingzi walked out of the mountain gate, there were even some busybodies who placed bets on how many moves the arrogant demonic beast could take. However, Sun Xingzi suddenly changed his attitude and acted as if he couldn't afford to offend this demonic beast. This immediately caught the attention of countless people. The eldest son of the Eastern Sea Dragon King revealed his dragon form in the demonic cloud. His azure eyes glanced at Sun Xingzi as he said in a deep voice, "It's not that I think highly of you. I'm here on the orders of the Black Water Dragon King and the dragon palaces of the 4 seas. As for why I'm doing this, use your brain. Don't tell me you still don't understand?" As soon as he finished speaking, many people's expressions changed. These words were a little murderous. Sun Xingzi had already lowered his attitude. Yet you're still spouting nonsense here. Aren't you a little ignorant? Bastard. Demonic beasts will always be demonic beasts, brainless things. Senior Sun Xingzi's expression has changed. I'm afraid he's about to attack. Open the bets, open the bets. Those who want to bet, quickly place your bets. You still dare to place bets? Return my spiritual stones and spiritual items. The surrounding noises didn't seem to reach Sun Xingzi's ears. Sun Xingzi frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, a hint of joy appeared in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Black Water Dragon King, for your magnanimity. Some time ago, an unidentified Dao Integration Realm cultivator put up a bounty on Heaven's path. He wanted to buy the life of a black Jiao in the Endless Sea. Although no name was mentioned, everyone knew that this bounty was actually targeted at the black Jiao. Subsequently, many Dao Integration Realm cultivators took out a large number of resources to increase the price. The bounty reward was piled up to a rather attractive level. Sun Xingzi was naturally no exception. However, not long after, the Sovereign Realm and Transcendent Realm powerhouses among the Heavenly Gate Guardians seemed to have gone crazy. They dug out all the resources sent from the northern frontier. According to the previous gift list, they gathered 10 times the amount of spiritual items and sent them to the northern frontier. What happened behind the scenes was thought-provoking. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the Black Jiao had already made his move. Even the Sovereign Realm and Transcendent Realm powerhouses didn't want to continue worsening their relationship with the Black Jiao. As for the Dao Integration Realm cultivators, other than the Yuxian sect, which had already formed a deadly feud with Lin Yuan, the other Dao Integration Realm cultivators were naturally anxious. They had always wanted to repair their relationship with Lin Yuan, but couldn't find a suitable opportunity. After all, Lin Yuan's main body was in the Endless Sea. They couldn't go there. As for Guan Zhaoshan, she had announced that she was going into seclusion some time ago. No one knew where she was now. The northern frontier was still at war. No matter how tough their heads were, they wouldn't dare to say that they could kill their way through the Sky Demon's territory alone, right? Now that the Black Jiao had asked him to do something, if he did it well, he could at least avoid a death calamity when he wanted to settle old scores, right? Go and pack up. There are still a few sects that need to go. Hurry up. The eldest son of the Eastern Sea Dragon King waved his hand. He didn't seem to have any intention of talking to Sun Xingzi. When such a conversation was heard, the cultivators who didn't have the background of the Heavenly Gate Guardians were all puzzled. They couldn't figure out why Sun Xingzi's attitude towards this beast was like this. There's also the Black Water Dragon King? Isn't that the Black Jiao from the northern frontier? They had heard of this name before. However, most of the time they just treated it as a joke. Names like the Dragon King or the Wild Python were all used by busybodies to flatter. No one denied that the Black Jiao was powerful and had outstanding aptitude. However, in the end, wasn't it just a beast that hadn't even reached the desolate demon realm? The cultivators who had the background of the Heavenly Gate Guardians were the most excited. After all, if Sun Xingzi could think of something, they could naturally think of the key points as well. Today they had indeed lost face by helping the Black Jiao. They had also offended some of the Heavenly Gate Guardians. However, they could avoid a certain death calamity. Who wouldn't want to do such a deal? How many other sects would they be included? The Heavenly Gate Guardians, who were originally laughing at the Yangji sect, couldn't laugh anymore. When they looked at the eldest son of the Eastern Sea Dragon King, their eyes were obviously filled with envy and expectation. They couldn't wait for the other party to come to their own sects next. It was just face. So what if they lost face? Compared to the lives of so many people in their sects, they wouldn't hesitate to kneel down and admit their mistakes even if Lin Yuan asked them to, let alone being slapped in the face. Ever since they knew that Lin Yuan's background did exist, and even the Supremes and Transcendent Realm cultivators had to be courteous to him, they regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. Some of them were timid, and they hadn't slept well for several days. However, no one noticed that while these people were shocked and discussing, some of the cultivators who were clamoring to be the banker quietly squeezed out of the crowd and frantically fled into the distance. What a joke. Were they supposed to return the good things that were in their hands? Very quickly, some people reacted. They shouted and pushed through the crowd, chasing after the fleeing cultivators. Chapter 859. It was different from the chaotic Jianghu continent. Lin Yuan, who was far away in the deep sea of the Endless Sea, was leisurely sleeping with his body crossed. The great old ones were still the same. They sent out aberrations to fight with the monsters in the Endless Sea. There was no sign of the decisive battle that Lin Yuan wanted. However, the ancestor demons had lived for such a long time. Naturally, they were not incompetent. They knew that the other party was deliberately lulling them. Occasionally they would hear some noise and would only sneer. According to the decision of the meeting, they would restrain each other's clansmen. After all, if they violated the rules, they would be expelled from the protected area of the Willowstone Sea. Furthermore, they would have to participate in the decisive battle. They could not leave too far away and could only station themselves in the nearby sea. If they did not have the help of the other sea demon clans, what was the difference between running out alone and being killed? This kind of punishment would not cause them to fight among themselves. It could even be said that they would not be able to fight. After all, the ugly words were said first. Whoever caused trouble would be kicked out. This was something that everyone had agreed to. Once the guardians of the Heavenly Gate arrive, we will immediately prepare for the decisive battle. The chances of winning are... Lin Yuan tilted his head. A cold light flashed in his heterochromatic eyes. He sighed. As expected, it's not that simple. In the perception of the Eye of God, an incomparably large number of aberrations were moving towards the Willowstone Fortress under the cover of the night. The scale was larger than ever before. In addition, the sea demons patrolling the walls of the Willowstone Fortress did not discover the enemy within a range of 30,000 meters. However, this could not escape the detection of Lin Yuan's Eye of God. These guys are coming out in full force. Lin Yuan stood up and suddenly realized that behind these quietly moving troops, there were more than 10 tyrannical figures. They were like shepherds, driving the remaining aberrations towards the Willowstone Fortress. Other than the great old ones, Lin Yuan did not believe that there were other existences with such abilities. This was going to be fun. This was the first time that the Great Old Ones had personally appeared on the battlefield. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Lin Yuan roared at the top of his lungs. However, the night was very quiet. The willow stone courtyard where he lived was also very quiet. *CK. Lin Yuan cursed inwardly. Although he had long guessed that the Great Old One would constantly provoke the inner demons of some sea demons, he couldn't do anything due to the rules. He could only let them continue to hibernate in the willow stone fortress. However, he didn't expect the other party to act so quickly and decisively. Are these demonic beasts of the endless sea *King retarded? The other party had done something right under their noses, yet they hadn't noticed? Some time ago, someone had been drawing and writing outside his small courtyard. After asking around, he only said that he was drawing a defensive formation to strengthen the defenses. Lin Yuan had been cautious, but he didn't expect that he would still fall into the other party's trap. It was clear that some of the commanders in the Willow Stone Fortress had been taken advantage of by the inner demons and had fallen to the side of the Great Old Ones. Outside his small courtyard, someone had probably already set up a soundproof formation. It was probably not just that. Either this formation also had the ability to trap in illusion formations, or the other party had already prepared a large number of experts to kill him here. Other than Lin Yuan, those commanders and high-ranking people like the Ancestor Demon Realm and the Demon King Realm were probably treated similarly. The other party clearly didn't intend to give the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea any chance to organize a resistance. They wanted to use this opportunity to break through the defenses of the Willowstone Fortress in one go and then use the human wave tactic to defeat them one by one. If it was just a formation, it shouldn't be a big problem. With the ability of the system, he could easily find a way out. However, if the other party had also set up a large number of sea demons to attack him, it wouldn't be a problem that could be solved in a short period of time. Although these Great Old Ones didn't have the ability to fight a decisive battle with the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea in a short period of time, they could only use this kind of unorthodox method to increase their chances of winning. After all, when the Heavenly Gate Guardians arrived at the Willowstone Fortress, Lin Yuan would try to start a decisive battle and defeat these Great Old Ones in one go. He didn't expect the other party to react faster than him. Even if the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea were familiar with the route, they had only set off for 3 days. It was already good enough that they could reach the Jianghu continent, not to mention gathering enough strength to help here. Looking at this gap in the battle, even Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh in admiration. The other party's vision was extremely accurate and ruthless. After they took care of the defenders of the Willowstone Fortress, they didn't need to rush to convert the sea demons at the back. They could just wait here and catch the Heavenly Gate Guardians off guard and further weaken the opponents they would face in the future. As expected. After the formation outside was activated, Lin Yuan was almost isolated from the outside world. Now that the aura of demonic beasts suddenly appeared, he didn't even need to think to know that this was one of the other party's arrangements. They wanted to see if these sea demons could kill him. If they couldn't, they would have achieved their goal by just stalling him. After carefully sensing the aura of the demonic beast that suddenly appeared, Lin Yuan's suspended heart was slightly relieved. Fortunately, the strongest one was only around the 6th level of the Demonic King Realm. Most of them were in the Desolate Demonic Realm or even the Mountain Lord Realm. This didn't mean that Lin Yuan was confident that he could deal with these creatures that were attacking him. After all, demonic kings weren't easy to deal with. Lin Yuan reckoned that even if he risked his life, the other party would have to use all their means. When he was weak and powerless, the Desolate Demonic Realm creatures could easily take his life. He heaved a sigh of relief because no ancestral demonic realm creatures had appeared in the battle that surrounded him. However, this didn't mean that the fellow who could provoke the inner demons of others and control them didn't control the ancestral demonic realm creatures. However, he was sure that there were many ancestral demonic realm creatures that were not under his control. The ancestral demonic realm creatures that had been taken advantage of by the inner demons had to deal with the normal ancestral demonic realm creatures. From another perspective, this was a manifestation of the lack of manpower. As long as one of them could charge out. As long as one of the ancestral demonic realm creatures broke through these unorthodox methods and killed their way out, they would be able to quickly form a defensive line and firmly block the deformed creatures outside the Willowstone Fortress. Then, the people in the city could focus on dealing with the demonic beasts that had been taken advantage of by the inner demons. Black Jiao, you're just an outsider. You haven't even reached the Demonic King Realm. What right do you have to give us orders? The demonic king in the lead raised his claw and pointed it at Lin Yuan. He let out a furious roar like a wild beast. He was very much like a worker who was fed up with his superior being inferior to him in every aspect and still had to pick on him. So, this is your inner demons? Lin Yuan was still coiled up. However, he opened his bloody mouth and revealed a playful smile. Chapter 860. During the previous meeting, Lin Yuan did not tell the complete truth. The Great Old One's method of provoking the inner demons of living beings and then turning them into sharp blades was indeed very similar to the Sky Demon, but there was a fundamental difference between the two. The Sky Demon evoked the inner demons of living beings, causing them to constantly sink into their own desires and become numb. Then he took the opportunity to occupy the other party's physical body, using this physical body to directly affect the material world. On the other hand, the Great Old Ones only used certain methods to evoke the inner demons of living beings, making them do things that they usually wanted to do but did not dare to do. For example, right now, a demon king had brought a group of monsters here. In essence, it was just that they could not stand Lin Yuan, an outsider, riding on their heads. In addition, the various sea demon clans were constantly in conflict. Because of the meeting that Lin Yuan had called earlier, all the sea demons were actually desperately suppressing themselves. Under such circumstances, it was countless times easier to provoke their inner demons than usual. However, the other party was an existence that could even affect the ancestor demon realm powerhouses. As long as Lin Yuan gave them a reminder, the demon kings below and the demonic beasts of lower realms were not challenging in the eyes of the other party. There was no difference in the difficulty level. What happened tonight was still within Lin Yuan's expectations. It was just that the other party had chosen the right time to strike and caught him off guard. But from another perspective, Lin Yuan's goal had been achieved. The battle of ideals could indeed suppress the distorting power of the Great Old Ones, but Lin Yuan knew very well that he was not the one who created the era. He was only relying on the experience of standing on the shoulders of a giant to bring the ideals of another world to this world. He just could not stand this deformed world. Even though he knew very well that this was a world where cultivators existed, ordinary people could only grit their teeth and silently endure no matter how dissatisfied they were. Even if another 1,000 years or 10,000 years passed, they would not be able to overturn the cultivators' ruling position. However, this world was obviously very vast, much more vast than the world Lin Yuan had been in his previous life. The production of all kinds of resources was also incomparably rich. The rich land could provide enough food, and the boundless land was enough for everyone to live on. What determined a person's status should be their own ability and contribution, not some laughable bloodline or cultivation. However, Lin Yuan was just a plagiarist after all. He was just used to the other world and didn't like the current world. It didn't mean that he was a living saint who saved people. Simply wanting to eliminate the Great Old Ones through a battle of ideals was nothing more than a fool's dream. As the classics of his previous life were recited over and over again, this concept would become weaker and weaker until it completely lost its effect. It was impossible to maintain the suppression of the Great Old Ones forever. Thus, the one who was anxious to start the final battle had always been Lin Yuan. Even if the mission was excluded, no one was more anxious than her. She did not use any confidentiality measures to send people to the Sky Martial continent to ask for reinforcements. Her goal was not to wait for reinforcements, but to let the Great Old Ones know that once the reinforcements were in place, the Great Old Ones would not even have a 30% chance of winning. Thus they would definitely come. This did not surprise Lin Yuan. Before the main course arrives, it's good to have an appetizer first. Lin Yuan opened her mouth and yawned, as if she did not put these demonic beasts in her eyes. At the same time, outside the Willow Stone Fort, the ancient barbarians expressionlessly looked at the tragic battlefield in front of them. Especially as time passed, the defensive line of the Willow Stone Fort became weaker and weaker. Countless deformed people were either hit by spells or arrows. They let out angry roars and fell down with their fangs bared and claws bared. Under the suppression of a flying restriction, these deformed people all fell to the ground without exception. Such a miserable death, if ordinary soldiers were to see it, they would definitely be afraid to fight. But to the mutants who didn't have much rationality left, this level of casualties was a joke. More mutants stepped on the meat paste formed by their seniors and continued to climb the walls of Willowstone Fortress. Some of the smarter ones even built a human wall to help their comrades climb to higher places more easily. The morale of the deformed people did not collapse. But the morale of the Willowstone Fort's defenders was about to collapse. With such a large number of deformed people attacking the Willowstone Fort, even if they did not do anything, countless demonic beasts would be awakened. Furthermore, they had rung the alarm more than 20 times, but until now, not a single reinforcements had come out from the city. This situation meant that there were only two possibilities. Either there was some big trouble in the city, or the demonic beasts in the city were sleeping like dead pigs, not waking them up even after the alarm rang 20 times. The answer was obvious. After all, those ancestral monster realm big shots did not need to sleep at all. Even if they were on a mental journey, they would not choose to wake up at such a critical moment. One by one, the demon beasts were slaughtered by the mutants. The commander on duty looked around, gritted his teeth and said, 10 minutes. Hold on for another 10 minutes. If there are no reinforcements, we will retreat. 10 minutes was not long, but to these defenders it was a bit too long. Even the commander himself was not sure if he could live past 10 minutes. But it couldn't be helped. The Black WRM's methods were so forceful that it simply caused all the demon beasts to be terrified. Practically every single one of these demon beasts that were responsible for guarding the city had a weakness in the Black WRM's hands. Once they disobeyed the Black WRM's orders or dared to have any bold thoughts, what awaited them would be pain and torture that was countless times more terrifying than death. The city could fall, but they could not be deserters. Even if they wanted to retreat, they had to wait until it was time to change shifts. This was the first order that the Black Jiao gave them that they could not disobey. Therefore, he could only hope that he could hold on for another 10 minutes, or that the problem in the city could be resolved within these 10 minutes. Then, the demonic beasts entangled with the unknown enemy in the city would be able to arrive as soon as possible. Chem? Why hasn't the city collapsed yet? Ancient E raised his eyebrows slightly. He saw that the commanders of the various defense zones did not choose to retreat in the face of the unstoppable demonic beasts. Instead, they gathered their remaining subordinates and attempted to retake the city walls that were gradually falling. He couldn't help but be startled. These demonic beasts, were they really not afraid of death? Or could it be that he had unknowingly fallen into the Black Jiao's trap? Was the other party simply inviting him into the trap? Ancient, I have a very uneasy feeling. A great old ruler who was also in human form and looked like a skinny old man walked up to Ancient E and spoke with a grave expression. Chapter 861. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 4 desolate demon realm demonic beast. You have gained 137 attribute points. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 2 desolate demon realm demonic beast. You have gained 89 attribute points. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 7 mountain lord demonic beast. You have gained 50 attribute points. System notifications appeared one after another in his mind. Other than the attribute points gained from killing, there were also all sorts of sea demon materials stored in the warehouse. With the help of the system, Lin Yuan could quickly create a batch of powerful demonic beasts that had the bloodlines of various sea demons. Excluding the fact that their growth speed was too slow and they needed Lin Yuan's attribute points to nurture, in terms of bloodlines, they would not be inferior to the various demonic beasts that had the bloodlines of the Dragon Clan. In fact, they might even be superior. Was he one step closer to overthrowing the rule of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and dominating the Endless Sea? Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's face became solemn, and he provocatively hooked the tip of his tail at the remaining sea monsters and sneered, "To tell you the truth, I am the same as you. I am also a guy who is plagued by inner demons, so I know very well how deadly the existence of inner demons is. Since I am your inner demon, then there is no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. So when you appear here, the only way to survive is to kill me. Even if you run away now, I have ways to find you." Being taken advantage of by an inner demon and being possessed by the sky demon were two completely different concepts. Although those who were taken advantage of by inner demons would lose part of their rationality, they would only lose their fear and respect. They were still themselves. If it were the sky demon, no matter how many of their companions died, it would not affect them. However, Lin Yuan had decisively entered the blood-boiling state. In addition, he was not weak in the first place. He was determined not to fight the Sea Demon King head-on and focused on killing the weaker demonic beasts of the desolate demon realm. After killing another batch of demonic beasts, the ones that were still alive were obviously terrified. Lin Yuan was not unfamiliar with that expression and gaze, because he was the same in his previous life. He could only look at his enemy with a hateful gaze. Over and over again he had overdrawn everything and abandoned his bottom line, but he still couldn't take revenge. When he arrived in this world with his current strength and achievements, he could easily crush his enemy in his previous life. However, he still couldn't return to the world of his previous life. This caused the inner demons in his heart to grow stronger day by day, and his temperament to become fiercer and fiercer day by day. He was already a typical example. Lin Yuan didn't want Countless himself to treat him as an inner demon in the future. It was too troublesome. It was better to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Lin Yuan had no intention of paying attention to the aberrations that were attacking Willowstone Fortress outside. After all, even the great old ones had arrived on the battlefield. No matter how arrogant he was, he did not think that he could face the ancestor demon realm beings head-on. No matter how much Joss flame power he had, it could not withstand such a burning, not to mention that he did not have much Joss flame power left. Thus, it would be better to hand those guys over to the Endless Sea. There was no need to put themselves in danger just to show off. What if the fortress was broken through? Then Lin Yuan would use facts to tell them that they were not the only ones who had been plotting in the dark. It was not just these guys who had been taken advantage of by the inner demons who had tampered with the Willowstone Fortress. I wonder how many experts in Willowstone Fortress have broken free from their entanglements, Lin Yuan muttered softly. Although he had various experiences and knowledge brought over from the information explosion era in his previous life, in addition to the almost masochistic training in his previous life, his shrewdness was not inferior to any ambitious and ruthless person. However, he had never dared to truly underestimate those old foxes who had lived for countless years. Naturally, it did not matter when everyone was smiling on the surface. However, when it came to life or the distribution of benefits, even he would not have thought of who would stab him first before the great old ones. The great old ones had seized the opportunity well, but to those old foxes, it was impossible for them to not think that the other party would fight to the death after the team had set off. They would take advantage of the fact that there was still some chance of victory to fight the monsters of the Endless Sea, rather than waiting for the guardians of the Heavenly Gate to arrive and wait for death. At most, they would be surprised that the other party had chosen to attack earlier, but they would not panic. As for the great old ones, would they be able to take care of everything? That would be a joke. To put it in a more mysterious way, those who had their inner demons stirred up mostly had weak Dao hearts or had flaws in their Dao hearts. And no matter what, it was impossible for such an existence to cultivate to the realm of a demon king or an ancestor demon. If it wasn't for a particularly strong sense of humiliation and obsession, even demon kings wouldn't be so easily provoked. As for ancestral demon realm bigwigs, even if a few ancestral demons were affected, there wouldn't be too many of them. It was impossible for them to hold back so many ancestral demons. It was just that they were all hiding in their own residences, unwilling to come out and take the lead. Let's see who can hold back first? Lin Yuan muttered in his heart with a smile that was not a smile. Black Jiao, if you have the guts, fight me head on. You're even worse than a human when it comes to dodging. A trash like you actually has the guts to call yourself the Black Water Dragon King in the Jianghu continent. Aren't you afraid that the wind will be too big for your own good? The Demon King's attacks had been cleverly avoided by Lin Yuan through the observation of the Eye of God. At this moment, its eyes were red, and it was panting heavily like an angry bull. It stared fiercely at Lin Yuan. Quite smart. Lin Yuan turned his head to look at the Demon King, and a hint of ridicule appeared in his eyes. Although he had not fought with the Demon King head-on, nearly 80% of his attention was focused on it. Originally, he had planned to rely on inciting the Demon King's frenzied attacks to exhaust its demonic power and physical strength. He did not expect the Demon King to react so quickly. Not only did it not continue to waste his efforts, it even provoked him, hoping to force Lin Yuan to take the initiative to fight it. After a moment of silence, Lin Yuan said with a smile, "Correction, I did not dodge. I was fighting from the beginning to the end. As a Demon King, you brought your subordinates to find trouble with me. In the end, you couldn't even protect your subordinates and could only rage helplessly. What qualifications do you have to question my name as the Dragon King? This is a name that even the ancestor demons of the Endless Sea have to acknowledge. You're courting death." The Demon King's face changed. It could not be bothered to continue resting. It roared crazily and pounced at Lin Yuan. Its heart demon was obviously a kind of jealousy. It was obviously older than Lin Yuan, and its cultivation was higher than Lin Yuan. However, after Lin Yuan arrived on the battlefield, it became a pawn that could only listen to Lin Yuan's orders. It was the same as the Dragon Clan youth from before. They were all trash that was jealous of Lin Yuan. Chapter 862. A demon king was chasing after him, but Lin Yuan was neither too fast nor too slow. His body was constantly twisting strangely. Even though his speed was not as fast as the demon king, he was always able to avoid his opponent's attacks. He even reaped the lives of one or two demon beasts of the desolate demon realm and below. He was also constantly mocking the demon king, lest it wake up and give up this meaningless war of attrition. The body movement of the roaming dragon's 9 transformations was so terrifying. It was definitely not something that ordinary martial arts techniques and footwork could compare to. Even though Lin Yuan was only at the beginner level, he was able to play with the demon king, who was a realm higher than him, as if he was dancing on the tip of a knife. If this body movement was cultivated to the extreme, it was enough to be compared with the famous magical powers in the untainted world. Shrinking the ground into an inch so close yet worlds apart. The reason why it was called a magical power and not a body movement was because once it was cultivated to the extreme, it no longer relied on the body to complete the movement. It was a kind of technique that could fold space and turn distance into distance. The body movement was only through various movements to adjust the movement of the muscles and force to increase the speed. However, this magical power already involved the highest space rules. Just a body movement was already so terrifying. Lin Yuan could not help but be more curious about the contents that were engraved in his blood but could not be cultivated with his current conditions. The roaming dragon's 9 transformations was not as simple as just 9 transformations. 9 was the limit of the number. It was derived from the number of 3s in the 6 lines. The cycle was endless. Black Jiao, die for me. The demon king's eyes became more and more red. Even the corners of his eyes were beginning to bleed. Lin Yuan even suspected that if this continued, he would be able to anger the demon king to death. Boom. At this moment there was a loud explosion. Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly turned cold. The city was breached? So fast? Because he was dealing with the demon king, Lin Yuan had not been observing the situation outside. However, the defense of the Willowstone Fortress could at least hold on for another 5 or 6 minutes. This period of time was enough for those old foxes to put aside their little calculations and take the initiative to stand up and face the enemy. However, how long had it been? How could the city be breached? One after another, powerful auras soared into the sky. One after another, monster ancestors and monster kings flew out from their mansions and madly rushed towards the source of the loud noise. Lin Yuan's expression also changed. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of some details and his eyes became playful. He turned his head to look at the flustered and exasperated demon king behind him and sneered, "Whatever happens outside has nothing to do with us. Come, continue." Good words couldn't persuade a damned ghost. In the end, some people were too ambitious and completely ignored his warning. He had previously wondered why the great old ones could grasp the timing so accurately, and why those fellows who had been taken advantage of by the inner demons could draw formations all over the city under the pretext of building fortifications without revealing the slightest bit of news. The demon king did not speak. He only panted and continued to chase after Lin Yuan. After all, Lin Yuan's cultivation was at the 8th level of the desolate demon realm. In addition, after activating the blood boil state, the values on his interface had reached a rather terrifying level. Even if the demon king wanted to catch up to him, he would have to use all his strength. At this moment, the demon king could not be said to be an arrow at the end of its flight. At this moment, the demon king had exhausted most of his physical strength and monster power. Naturally, he would not speak. If he had the strength, he might as well throw a few more punches. However, the surrounding desolate demons and river masters who came with him all changed their expressions. They all looked like they wanted to cry but had no tears. What was in this Black Jiao's head? Although they were not Lin Yuan's match, their cultivation was still there. It was not as if they could not see anything. For example, if Lin Yuan wanted to leave the battle, the demon king would not be able to catch up to Lin Yuan even if it risked its life. Even if it chased for a while, it would be hard to say who would kill who. But the problem was that the aberrations had already broken through the city's defenses and triggered the defensive formation. If they did not provide support, after the aberrations poured into this fortress built by the joint efforts of various sea demon clans, all the originally built fortifications would be completely ineffective. The endless sea demon beasts did not have the slightest advantage against the aberrations on flat ground. In addition, they were being harassed by the inner demons, and there were also ambitious people with ulterior motives eyeing them covetously. If this battle was fought, even if the Endless Sea went all out, it would be very difficult to win, right? This Black Jiao did not quickly leave the battle and go to the front lines to suppress the aberrations. Why did he have to stay here and kill these small fries? Wasn't he crazy? At the same time, Ancient Yi and a group of old dominators had already arrived at the top of the city wall. Ancient Yi's feet were stepping on an incomplete corpse. It was the commander who had ordered them to hold on for another 10 minutes before retreating. Looking at the aberrations pouring into the Willowstone fortress like a tide, Ancient Yi's brows were tightly knitted together. His mind was rapidly calculating what was wrong with this trip. This place was very wrong. It was the clearest about Ziye's methods. Because Ziye was originally a figure of the same era as him. It was just that at that time he was still a strategist, while Ziye was just an ambitious person who was good at bewitching people and collecting large amounts of cultivation resources for himself. The two could be said to be sworn enemies, but in every battle in that era he would always be the final victor. It was not simply because his intelligence was higher than Ziye's, but because Ziye only had a few tricks up his sleeve. To others it was a big trouble, but to Ancient Yi it was nothing to be afraid of. Ancient Yi did not believe that Ziye's little tricks were so effective that they could suppress all the experts in the Willowstone fortress. But so far they had not encountered any effective resistance. This was an indisputable fact. But the fact that it was so made Ancient Yi's heart uneasy. It was as if there was an invisible beast hiding in the undefended fortress, waiting for its prey to be delivered to its mouth. More importantly, Ancient Yi was not the only one who felt uneasy. The old dominator named Guanggu was in existence that was older than it. He was once a commander of the border army. In countless battles with the barbarian tribe and demon beasts, he had honed his intuition and perception that were sharper than that of demon beasts. According to the clues in the history books, this honed intuition had saved Guanggu no less than 20 times. Previously, Wild Bone had told Ancient Yi that his intuition was warning him not to step into the fortress, or else his fate would be very miserable. If it was only Ancient Yi alone, he could explain it away as overthinking. But what if Wild Bone's intuition was added to the mix? Chapter 863. What kind of trap did that Black Jiao set up? To be able to make a tiger general like Wild Bone have such an uneasy premonition when he had the upper hand? According to the original plan, as long as Ziye incited the existence of the inner demon to hold back all the high-level combat power of the Endless Sea side, they could quickly break through the defensive line of the Willowstone fortress. Then they would gather their forces and charge into the city, killing those troublesome ancestral demon one by one, slowly tilting the battle in their favor. They could even decide the outcome of the battle and completely defeat the Endless Sea's Yao beasts. However, reality gave them a loud slap in the face. The defense line of the Willowstone fortress was not that easy to break through. Even if it was attacked by the aberrations and there were no reinforcements, the city guards on duty did not collapse as expected. Instead, they quickly adjusted their mentality and organized the defense line again. As they were not worried about the unforeseen events that would happen after a long time, these old dominators even personally took action and broke through a considerable portion of the defense line. Otherwise, it would have taken them at least 10 minutes to break through these city guards. In a sense, they had already lost. No matter which era it was, there was a rule to follow. High-level cultivators and high-level monsters had their own battlefields. Unless the low-level monsters provoked them, they could not take the initiative to attack. Previously, when the monsters of the Endless Sea gathered here, although there were many experts, when the monsters and aberrations fought, both sides had a tacit understanding not to send experts to kill the low-level monsters and aberrations. However, tonight they took the initiative to break this rule. This also meant that the monsters in the Endless Sea didn't need to talk about rules anymore. They had more experts on their side. As long as they could hold back the great old ones, the other high-level monsters could directly kill the aberrations. In the blink of an eye, they could turn the aberrations into generals without an army. Therefore, there must be no deviation in the plan. They must successfully behead some of the ancestral demons that were held back and make up for the difference in combat power between the two sides. How dare you? Using your cultivation to kill my people, pay with your life. With a roar, the first ancestral demon rushed out from the shadows. Gu Yi's expression suddenly turned ugly. He turned his head to glare at the stunned Ziyi and swallowed the vulgarities that were at the tip of his tongue. Soon after, a second, a third, more and more ancestral monsters flew over. Some of the Yao kings didn't even bother to greet their opponents. They didn't care what realm their opponents were at. Instead, they unleashed all sorts of innate abilities and origin arts to slaughter the tide of mutants. At this moment, Gui no longer had the mood to blame Ziyi. After all, there was no point in investigating who was responsible after the incident. The urgent matter at hand was to think of a way to deal with the demon ancestors who weren't entangled, or even turn the tide of the battle and defeat the Endless Sea's demon beasts. Ancient Yi was silent for a while. He gritted his teeth and said, "I didn't expect the Black Jiao to be able to do this. However, since things have already come to this point, we can only take a gamble. Don't worry about the heavenly punishment anymore. Let's release our original strength and see how many demon beasts we can distort. Otherwise we're all finished." No. Just as Wild Bone opened his mouth and uttered a single word, almost all the great old overlords released their original strength. In an instant, a huge distortion force surged out like a tide. It was as if they wanted to turn the Willowstone Fortress into a demon nest like the one they were stationed in before. The twisting power was so dense that it was almost corporeal. Like purple sea snakes, they wriggled their bodies towards the demonic beasts that were fighting. Even the ancestral demon who had expected this, couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He looked at the twisting power with fear, not daring to take another step forward. Even with their level of cultivation, they might not be able to withstand such a dense distortion force. Even if they didn't become mutants on the spot, they would be trapped in the purple demonic domain and be squeezed dry bit by bit until their minds completely collapsed and they fell to the same level as the mutants. Too careless. Many ancestral monster ancestors cursed inwardly. Looking at the demon kings and desolate demons fighting with the mutants, their eyes were filled with pain. Even for a force as strong as the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, the demon kings and desolate demons could be considered as the mainstay. Losing one of them would cause them to feel pain for a long time, let alone these demon kings and desolate demons that were gathered by the various sea demon clans. There was no saving them now. After all, when they came, no one cared about the Black Jiao. If the Black Jiao wasn't here to suppress the distortion force, they would be completely helpless. Moreover, with such a dense distortion force, even the Black Jiao might not be able to suppress it. The Endless Sea is finished. A demon ancestor lowered his head dejectedly. His eyes were filled with sorrow. Although the other demon ancestors didn't show it so obviously, their eyes were filled with fear and panic. Ah! One of the great old overlords suddenly screamed. The origin energy that was flowing out like a flood paused, and its distorted body rolled wildly on the ground. It was as if an invisible flame was burning its body and soul. After a few more breaths, this great old one completely stopped moving. Strangely, its body was turning into pitch-black charcoal bit by bit. It was swept away by the undercurrent at the bottom of the sea. It turned into fine powder and drifted away. Was this AF** king joke? Burned to death at the bottom of the sea? The group of demon ancestors looked at each other, as if they couldn't understand how the other party had died. Their gazes swept back and forth, becoming more and more confused, as if they were trying to find out who was behind the death of the great old one. I remember now, this is a heavenly tribulation. According to the ancient records of my clan, when a living being does something that heaven and earth can't tolerate, it will attract a heavenly tribulation. An ancestral dragon's vertical eyes lit up. He said excitedly, "These aberrations forcefully released the distortion force in an attempt to pollute us. This kind of behavior is seen as an unforgivable evil by the heavens. Therefore, a heavenly tribulation was sent to punish them." The existence of heavenly tribulation was never a secret. It was especially so for the Four Seas Dragon clan that inherited from the Great Desolate World. They didn't realize it before because this was an incomplete world. Not to mention immortality, it was extremely difficult to live for tens of thousands of years. Naturally, there weren't many cultivators or demon beasts that could attract a heavenly tribulation. This was also the first time they saw such a thing. Chapter 864. Let's release our demonic power and divine power as well. We don't expect to be able to block these distorted forces. As long as we can buy enough time, they will naturally be killed by the heavenly tribulation. The ancestral dragon shouted and took the lead to release his pure demonic energy and divine energy. He took the lead to collide with the twisting energy that was like a purple sea. In just an instant, his energy was greatly contaminated. It could even be said that in the blink of an eye, his decades of hard work had been destroyed. After all, he could only forcefully disperse the contaminated demonic energy. He did not have the courage to take it back into his body. The other ancestral monster ancestors did the same. In a life-and-death situation, none of them dared to be stingy with their strength. Ancient Yi's expression changed slightly as he gritted his teeth and cursed in his heart. The Black Jiao definitely had other tricks up his sleeves. It knew very well that as long as it released its power of origin to forcibly distort the sea monsters here, it would definitely attract a heavenly tribulation. Therefore, when they did similar things before, they either released their power of origin bit by bit to transform the sea into a distorted land, or they slowly distorted the sea monsters through mental pollution. They had never done anything like forcibly distorting the sea monsters. However, the heavenly tribulation shouldn't have come so quickly. At the same time that they released their power of origin, the heavenly tribulation had already arrived. Other than the guy who was burned to death by the fire tribulation, all of them were going through the tribulation. They were just barely able to withstand it and didn't lose their lives. However, as the fire tribulation grew stronger, more and more of them died. After passing the fire tribulation, there was still the water tribulation and the wind tribulation to face. According to the ancient records, after passing these three tribulations, one could become an immortal or a god and live forever. Looking at the entire Sky Martial continent, there were many cultivators with high cultivation levels who attracted the heavenly tribulation, but there was not a single one who could pass the heavenly tribulation. Cultivation was to go against the will of the heavens and to pursue immortality. It was a great evil to the heavens. They broke free from the river of time and descended into the world, vainly attempting to destroy the era. However, the heavenly tribulation wasn't something that would happen in time. It was just like the saying, good will be rewarded with good and evil will be punished with evil. Even if someone did something intolerable and triggered the heavenly tribulation, there would still be a reaction process. They had only released the power of the origin and had not sowed any evil consequences, yet they had already started to undergo the heavenly tribulation. How could this be justified? It was as if the heavenly tribulations had been waiting here all along, and as soon as they made a move, they immediately suffered retribution. Saying that it was the Black Jiao's doing seemed to be a little flattering. After all, the power of the heavenly street was not something that could be used by ordinary people. No matter how deep the Black Jiao's calculations were, it was impossible for him to get the will of the world to deal with them. Otherwise, why would the Black Jiao cooperate with these monsters in the endless sea? He could have easily killed them with a wave of his hand and sent down the heavenly tribulation. However, the heavenly tribulation came so quickly that it definitely couldn't be described as a coincidence. Ancient Yi, what do we do now? Stop and run, or... At this moment, Ziye's eyeball-shaped body had already started to turn into a charred black color. It was obvious that he could not hold on any longer. He could not help but look anxiously at the most powerful think tank in their group, hoping to ask for a way to save his life. Let's do it. Ancient Barbarian's expression darkened, and he released even more of his origin energy. He coldly said, either the heavenly tribulation doesn't come or if it does, it will be impossible to avoid it. You can only rely on your cultivation to endure it. Apart from that, there is no other way to survive. You motherf asterisk cur? Ziye's expression changed. The pain of being burned by the heavenly fire almost caused his mind to collapse. Before he could finish cursing, he forcefully swallowed it. Ancient Barbarian frowned with some dissatisfaction. He coldly said, if it wasn't for you making a mistake and causing so many demon ancestors to be here waiting for us to come, how would we end up like this? You still have the face to talk. At this point he cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, since we're going to die anyway, even if we die, we can't let these demon beasts of the endless sea have it easy. Increase the power of the origin energy. Before we die we have to get enough of them. Ruthlessness completely appeared on this former general's face. Every wise person's greatest pain was being dragged down by a useless teammate, causing a perfect plan to have to be modified by force. If things went wrong, not only would this modification not achieve the desired effect, it might even cause the person to lose his life. Ziyi was obviously that pig-like teammate. However, since things had come to this point, the demon beasts of the endless sea and the great old ones definitely could not coexist. Before they died, a few of them could be considered as avenging themselves. Under the threat of the heavenly tribulation, Ancient Barbarian had completely given up on living. But, Quangu, why are you still here? Ancient Barbarian suddenly turned his head and thought of Quangu, who had not used his origin energy, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. This battle was completely lost. Among the great old ones, only Jianghu had not used his origin energy. The rest were facing the baptism of the heavenly tribulation. Death was only a matter of time. However, if there was still Jianghu left, they would only die once. Their great cause could still be accomplished. After they died, they could still hide from the will of the world and obtain a chance to reincarnate. If they could awaken their innate wisdom and overcome the mystery of being in the womb, they could even return to this world without any hidden dangers. Ancient Barbarian had no intention of blaming Jianghu. After all, Jianghu had already expressed his uneasy premonition before. When the demon beasts of the Endless Sea appeared to block them, Jianghu spoke again and tried to stop them from releasing their origin energy to pollute the Willowstone Fortress. However, Ancient Barbarian did not give Jianghu a chance to finish his words. At this point, could Ancient Barbarian blame Jianghu for speaking slowly? Jianghu smiled bitterly and shook his head. His voice was mournful. All of you must die. As soon as his voice fell, countless milky white lights suddenly lit up in the dark Willowstone Fortress. Then, a mixture of different voices slowly sounded. It was the scriptures that Lin Yuan had read during the Battle of Ideologies. However, this time in the fortress, there were countless voices singing these scriptures. It was no longer Lin Yuan alone facing the entire group of great old ones. As the singing became louder and louder, under First Flood Dragon's lead, countless gray-scaled Flood Dragon people walked out of the white lights. Teleportation formation. I see. Ancient Barbarian's eyes flashed with a touch of understanding. He smiled bitterly. So the most dangerous thing in the Willowstone Fortress is not the demon ancestors, but the demon beasts who use Black Jiao's ideologies to fight against us. If we are caught off guard, we will be trapped and even completely destroyed. Chapter 865. The New Era and the Old Era, two completely different concepts collided with each other. In just a moment, the power of distortion that the ancestor demons could barely resist and still could not stop was shaken back a distance of 16 to 17 feet. It was almost directly under the feet of a group of great old ones. Fortunately, it did not directly hit back their power of origin. Whether it was Lin Yuan or the gray-scaled Flood Dragon person, they were not the true pioneers of the new era, but the true inheritors. In this kind of battle where realm did not count, even the newly born gray-scaled Flood Dragon person could contribute a part of their strength, suppressing the great old ones with an absolute advantage in numbers. Just like the old era was destined to be overthrown by the new era, this unstoppable power was almost unstoppable. The faces of Ancient E and the other great old ones became abnormally ugly. The heavenly tribulation was not a power that they could resist. They had fought with their backs against the wall, but they had only managed to exchange a group of Monster King Realm and Desolate Monster Realm monster beasts. This kind of battle situation was not even as good as a real battle. After all the scheming, the ones who lost the most miserably were the great old ones who had the upper hand and had the upper hand? Wild Bone retreat. Ancient E roared with a ferocious expression. The only one who did not release the power of distortion, Wild Bone, was now the hope of the entire village. As long as they could overturn the new era, everything could be reversed. Even if their souls were scattered by the heavenly tribulation, Wild Bone could still cut off a part of the long river of time in the future and salvage them from a certain time period. After instilling memories into them, they could be considered as reborn. Even if the world's will was ruthless, it would not be ruthless to the fire seed of an era, because the world needed to evolve. Only a constantly changing world had the possibility of continuous evolution. Formation. Demon subduing formation, get ready. Don't let a single one escape. Wild Bone smiled bitterly and did not speak, but a roar in the common language of the Jianghu continent came from the distance. Turning his head, he could see human cultivators dressed in different clothes frowning as they used their gang cheese to push away the surrounding seawater. At the same time, they took out all kinds of weapons, instruments, talismans, formation plates, and other things that they had brought with them, completely blocking off their escape route. Some people kept on muttering softly, but every time their lips opened and closed, it would make the distorting power in the surroundings fade a little. The corners of Wild Bone's mouth twitched as he revealed a bitter smile. Actually, when we set foot on this fortress, my intuition told me that our path of survival was almost cut off. If we had forced our way out then, more than half of us would have been able to survive. But now, I'm the only one who still has the ability to fight. Do you think I'll be able to break out of here? Wild Bone replied with a bitter smile. Seeing the human cultivators get into formation, the barbarians had a bitter smile on their faces and sighed softly. They had to face the three tribulations of fire, water and wind, not the thunder tribulations that were created after the immortals established the heavenly court and the thunder department. Otherwise, if they rushed into the crowd with a thunder tribulation cloud above their heads, they could still cause effective damage and force those cultivators to disperse. However, the heavenly tribulations that came from the world's will test were all tribulations that were born from the inside out. In essence, it was not something that later cultivators could resist with a few treasures. Or if one's physique was a little stronger, they could not even use treasures. If one did not meet any of the criteria to become an immortal, only death would await them. The only one who would be affected was the person undergoing the tribulation. Not to mention bringing lightning to crash into people. In their current state, even an ordinary person with a chopper would be able to send them on their way. Wild Bone stood in place and thought for a moment. Then, his thin body slowly turned around and rushed towards the formation of the human cultivators. At the same time, his right hand, which was originally thin and wrinkled like tree bark, began to fill with blood as he rushed out. His skin began to stretch and his arm continued to grow. In the blink of an eye, his arm had become larger than his entire body. On top of that, his arm was covered with moving orange eyes that looked very evil. The situation had reached this point. The other great old ones had lost their fighting strength. Wild Bone was being attacked by both the monsters of the Endless Sea and the Heavenly Gate Guardians. In addition, the gray-scaled flood dragon person was reciting the classics from Lin Yuan's previous life, so he could not use the power of distortion. Even if he had the fighting strength of an ancestor demon, he could only choose to wait for death or actively seek death. On the other hand, the mutated Wild Bone was ferocious. He was almost single-handedly suppressing the Elysium Guardians who were in formation. Coupled with his terrifying intuition, he was always able to accurately avoid the area of influence of the talismans and formation plates. Even if he accidentally broke into the area, he would enter the area with the least threat because he had no choice. It would not take long for him to kill his way out. He single-handedly forced all the Heavenly Gate Guardians to retreat nearly 100 meters. He had used up countless talismans and magic treasures before he could barely kill this tyrannical great old one. It was very obvious that when it said that all the great old ones would break out of the encirclement together, at least half of them would be able to escape. From the combat power that it had displayed, half of them would be able to escape. Even if the goblin beasts of the Endless Sea and the Guardians of the Heavenly Gate attacked them together, if they wanted to escape and did not continue fighting, close to 80% of them would be able to escape. The ancestor demons who stayed in the Willowstone Fortress were slightly stunned. They looked at the unlucky ones who were crushed by Wild Bone and subconsciously shivered. If Wild Bone had chosen to attack the Willowstone Fortress instead of the Heavenly Gate Guardians who were in formation, they would have to pay 10 times the price of the Heavenly Gate Guardians. After all, although their fighting strength was not inferior to the Heavenly Gate Guardians, they did not have formation plates, talismans, or other supporting tools. In a situation where each of them had their own ulterior motives, they would not be able to fight to the death with Wild Bone. Even if they fought, they might not necessarily win, and the Demon Kings and Desolate Demons would suffer even more casualties. As for why Wild Bone charged towards the Heavenly Gate Guardians who were more difficult to deal with, after all, after the Willowstone Fortress, they would be at the rear of the monsters of the Endless Sea. Not only were there patrolling monsters everywhere, but there were also teleportation formations between the various sea regions. If Wild Bone had entered the other sea regions like an iron fool, he would have died even faster. Instead, if he escaped back to the area that the great old ones once occupied, he might have a chance of survival. Black Jiao, you win. After Wild Bone died in battle, Ancient Barbarian sneered. His eyes rolled as if he was thinking about something. Chapter 866. A moment later, the armored Jiao One walked up to Ancient Yi and expressionlessly said, "Our Dragon King is currently busy catching rats. He told me to tell you to extinguish any thoughts you have. Before he completely exterminates all of you, he will definitely not leave the Endless Sea." Hearing this, Ancient Barbarian was slightly startled. Then the corners of his mouth rose, his lips slightly opened as if he was saying something, but also as if it was just a meaningless twitching of his muscles. However, before he could even spit out a single syllable, he had already turned into a charred corpse, being washed into fine powder by the undercurrent of the sea, slowly drifting towards the unknown sea. In this battlefield, other than the gray-scaled flood dragon people and human cultivators, the remaining survivors were all monsters of the desolate demon realm and above. With their hearing, although they couldn't hear what Ancient Yi didn't say in the end, they could hear Jiao Wen's words clearly. Before he completely exterminates all of you, the Black Jiao will definitely not leave the Endless Sea. There didn't seem to be any problem with this sentence at first. After all, the principle of eliminating evil was universal in that world. The Endless Sea's demonic beasts were naturally worried that the Great Old Ones hadn't been completely wiped out. If one or two of them had escaped, they would hide for a period of time before making a comeback. They wouldn't be so lucky every time that a nemesis like the Black Flood Dragon would appear. Although the sea demons of each ethnic group had their own plans, most of them wanted to take this opportunity to weaken the power of other ethnic groups after Lin Yuan and the old rulers had a battle of ideas. Even if they could not dominate the Endless Sea, it would be good for their own ethnic group to occupy a few more sea areas. They fought the old rulers with the idea that even if they could not dominate the Endless Sea, it would be good for their ethnic group to occupy a few more sea areas. However, no one could deny that if it wasn't for the Black Jiao, the sea demons of the Endless Sea would have already been exterminated. If Lin Yuan wanted to stay and exterminate the aberrations, they would naturally agree and fully cooperate. However, after thinking about it carefully, they felt that this sentence didn't sound right. When would it be exterminated? Were the aberrations really the only ones that were exterminated? In this war with the old rulers, all the sea demon clans had suffered losses. This was especially true for some of the sea monster clans that had barely managed to rank among the top sea monster clans in the past. Even their only ancestral monster clans had died. These sea monster clans would undoubtedly become fat sheep in the eyes of other sea monster clans that had not suffered such great losses. After a series of suppression, it was likely that their sea monster clans would be wiped out, let alone protect their former territories. After all, for those clans that had lost their only demon ancestor, if they had died in the hands of the old dominators, it would still be fine. There would always be some sympathy. However, everyone would maintain restraint and not really let these sea demon clans be exterminated or starved. They would leave the sea areas and benefits that were suitable for their current strength. Otherwise, if the Endless Sea were to encounter a similar crisis again, who would be foolish enough to sacrifice themselves? However, the clans behind the only demon ancestor who had died at the hands of a mysterious expert because they had tried to stop Lin Yuan from carrying out a battle of ideas would probably not receive such good treatment. After all, everyone had suffered heavy losses. If they didn't snatch the resources accumulated by the other clans, how could they quickly cultivate the next generation and fight for more benefits while the other clans were suffering heavy losses? The war would continue in the following days. However, when it came to distributing benefits, due to the existence of the aberrations, the Black Jiao would definitely be able to get a share. With these resources, the sea monsters under his command would probably be even more powerful. In addition, the Black Jiao had already established a connection with the Sea Monster Guild. With the cooperation of the Brave Crab Clan, the Evil Dragon Camp, the Gray-Scaled Flood Dragon People, and the members of the Sea Monster Guild, the trade city was almost completed. It would not take long before it could officially open for business. Judging from the means that the Black Jiao had previously displayed, this city built on the seabed would sooner or later be like a nail firmly embedded in the Endless Sea. It would create terrifying benefits for him and affect the power structure of the entire Endless Sea. Some of the sea monsters' eyes were shining brightly, while some sea monsters' eyes were filled with worry. However, most of the sea monsters' eyes were filled with regret. After all, as long as the aberrations were not completely cleaned up, Lin Yuan would not leave. Even if he wanted to leave, the sea monsters of the Endless Sea would not let him go. If this process took a long time, then the rise of the gray-scaled flood dragon people and the Brave Crab Clan could be said to be a matter of certainty. Among them, most of them had hesitated before and did not board Lin Yuan's ship. Now, if they went to him again, the price would not be the same as before. The first Brave Crab Clan to eat crabs had sold their entire clan. Although it was because of the young clan leader, who could prove that Tai Mu's original intention was not like this. During the negotiation, if the Black Jiao insisted on this point, should these sea monsters who wanted to rely on the Black Jiao hand over their family's assets? Although all the sea monsters knew that the Black Jiao's future path was definitely going to be upward, after all, he had a monstrous aptitude, a powerful background and connections with various forces. Although there were pros and cons, on the whole, the Black Jiao had never suffered any losses since he became famous. Except for the benefits that he voluntarily gave away, whoever wanted to take more would inevitably become a stepping stone for the Black Jiao. However, strictly speaking, the Black Jiao ship was really not a good ship. Otherwise, even if they took out all their assets, the Brave Crab clan would definitely not be the only Brave Crab clan that boarded the ship. The fundamental reason was that Lin Yuan, the Black Jiao, was not the overlord of the Endless Sea. No matter how strong his background was, as long as he did not dominate the Endless Sea, he would have to leave the Endless Sea sooner or later. At that time, no matter how big his foundation was, it would be divided by the other sea monsters. Once they boarded Lin Yuan's ship, they would either support Lin Yuan to dominate the Endless Sea, like how the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas replaced the Whale Clan, or assist the gray-scaled Flood Dragon Clan to replace the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Otherwise, when Lin Yuan left, they would either follow Lin Yuan to live in a completely unfamiliar place, or they would certainly suffer, waiting for the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas to swallow them up and annihilate them. Among these sea monster clans with complicated thoughts, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas was the most worried. Even if they were very clear that once they left the Black Jiao behind, their ruling rights would be shaken, they could not ignore the remnants of the aberrations that might exist. After all, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was currently in a precarious situation and could not withstand a second attack. After a series of battles, out of the 6 dragon gods, 2 were dead and 1 was seriously injured. More than half of their top fighting strength had been lost. In addition to the demon kings and desolate demons that they had previously lost, it could be said that the losses were disastrous. Chapter 867. Today, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was no doubt strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Their comprehensive strength was far inferior to the Sea Demon Guild and the monsters in the Outer Sea. If they wanted to call themselves the Overlord of the Endless Sea, they had to consider whether the other Sea Demon clans had any objections. If Black Jiao insisted on being enemies with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, they were not afraid of Black Jiao, but they were worried that once Black Jiao started, the other Sea Demon clans would realize the nature of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, which was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. They were afraid that they would immediately be attacked by the other Sea Demon clans. The old and new grudges that had accumulated over the years would all be settled at once. Not a single one of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would be left alive. No matter how strong the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas was, it was a thing of the past. Now the various Sea Demon clans had grown up. A considerable number of them had even left the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and established their own clans in some sea areas of the Endless Sea. Now they were eyeing the throne of the Overlord. In the past, the 6 dragon gods could not protect the shaky prestige of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Now there were only 3 dragon gods left. The key was that Black Jiao's background was too mysterious and powerful. It was originally only Black Jiao who could bully them. If they touched Black Jiao, they might be exterminated. This kind of sullen feeling had always been given to other Sea Demon clans or coastal humans by the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. This time it was the other way around. They finally understood why the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas was so unpopular. While the monsters of the Endless Sea were worried, Lin Yuan was still in his house with the Demon King. With the help of the Eye of the God, he had already confirmed the fact that the Great Old Ones had been defeated. What he had to do next was to wait for the countdown of the second stage of the mission to end and receive the system reward. The matter of laying a foundation in the Endless Sea had already been put on the agenda. Once he was on the right track, he would leave the Endless Sea. After all, although he was walking the path of the totem ancient god, if he did not take the power of incense, how different would he be from a fool? According to the records in the Book of Life, a normal god should cultivate believers, develop their church, absorb faith, give back faith, and cultivate believers in a cycle. This kind of god's path could be considered normal, but it could also be considered abnormal. It was about long-term and sustainable development. The longer a god existed, the stronger their believers would be. Powerful believers could enter different worlds to develop their churches and cultivate more believers. Then, the god would give back a portion of the power of incense to the believers who performed well. At the same time, it would strengthen the believers and encourage other believers to improve. However, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would become less and less. Every once in a while, there would be a period of decline. For existences like the gods, it did not matter if there was no oxygen, but without spiritual energy, they would definitely not be able to survive. Most of the gods who walked this path died in this way. After all, without spiritual energy or without enough spiritual energy, the gods could not descend to the human world. Those believers who worked hard time and time again to no avail would naturally give up their faith. They would even think that the God they believed in had died. However, the period when spiritual energy of heaven and earth was restored could be said to be quite long. It would take at least 5,000 years. Without the blessing of the gods, no mortal could live for such a long time. Over time, the line of faith would be broken, and the sleeping gods would naturally fall. For example, the ancient lizard god could wake up because it still had some remaining faith, so it was not completely dead. This was also the reason why it had shamelessly wanted to take advantage of Lin Yuan's merit. The so-called ancient totem god was like harvesting leeks. The gods who walked this path were similar to the demon beasts at the peak of the ancestor demon realm. Although they could also absorb the power of incense and use it effectively, it was a one-time resource. Once it was used up, it would be gone. The next time they used it, they would have to think of a way to harvest more leeks. Moreover, the unique sacrificial ritual was an ability that ordinary gods could not imitate. They could obtain the power of incense through transactions. In other words, even if the world's decline came, as long as they could go to other worlds with spiritual energy, the ancient totem god would not die and could continue harvesting leeks. However, gods like the ancient totem god would not be restricted. This was because instead of saying that their sacrificial ritual was a sacrifice to heaven and earth, it would be better to say that they were making transactions with other living beings according to the rules. The power of incense they earned was just a reward for being a middleman. Lin Yuan was a middleman who had not yet become a god. He still had to complete the sacrificial ritual through the system's channels. He was like a middleman of middlemen. Even if there was a transaction, the system would get the biggest share in the end. Whether it was the heavenly axiom or Hongjun, they could destroy the ancient totem gods physically. However, they could never grasp their weakness and use them for their own purposes. If they encountered a more powerful ancient totem god, such as an existence like the ancestral dragon, they could only find a place to seal him. There was no way to kill him. During the Warring States period, the ancestral dragon even came out as Ying Zheng to cause a ruckus. Lin Yuan rejected the route arranged by the system. He did not want to encounter believers being absorbed by other gods, or the end of the world's decline, or a series of events arranged by the system to cut off his line of faith. If that happened, how would he be different from a tool? The northern frontier was his foundation. He had to manage it well. If he left for too long, those fellows who were behaving honestly now would bare their fangs. Why bother? Weren't they all leaks? As for the problem of the city of trade being divided up by the endless seas monsters after he left, Lin Yuan just wanted to laugh. Just like the dragon clan of the Four Seas who had been in the position of overlord for a long time, even if they were at a disadvantage, they were used to ordering the other sea demon clans around. Although those sea demon clans who wanted to rebel against the dragon clan of the Four Seas said that they were not convinced, they were still enslaved deep in their hearts. Therefore, before they were sure whether Lin Yuan could win against the dragon clan of the Four Seas, most of the sea demon clans did not dare to bet for fear of losing everything. Who said that the dragon clan of the Four Seas was the overlord when Lin Yuan was not here? Now, would the dragon clan of the Four Seas dare to bare their fangs against the Sea Demon Guild? They would not dare to even if they had the guts. The city of trade was tied to the Sea Demon Guild. If the dragon clan of the Four Seas reached out, it was equivalent to snatching food from the tiger's mouth. If even the dragon clan of the Four Seas could not get a share, then the other sea demon clans could not even think about it. The problem that Lin Yuan had to solve had always been how to subdue the large idle forces that he had tied to the pirate ship, so that they would remain obedient when he was not in the endless sea. Was it important whether he could win against the dragon clan of the Four Seas or not? Come on, I'm almost out of strength. Come on. Lin Yuan teased the silly Demon King while quickly thinking about this problem that he had to face. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.